Guys, I can't film this if you're all over me. I appreciate that you want attention, but I can't really give it to you right now. Well, howdy, folks. My dogs are not going to cooperate with me and make filming this video easy, but that's okay. Maybe shooting this outdoors wasn't such a good idea. I thought you two would be kind of mellow and relaxed. But clearly not today. Clearly this was the wrong day to try and shoot this. I know you want attention, but I can't give it to you right now. I'm trying to film something. So a while ago, I had the bright idea to try and make a little bit more content for this channel, to start kind of cutting some more stream highlights, to start pulling together clips from streams that we'd done and making them into, you know, well, highlights, putting them up as separate videos, whatever, right? We haven't streamed in quite some time because the internet at my house has been messed up for, at this point, months, and I can't stream, which is great. So I haven't really had much material with which to make those, but the first thing I was going to cut was a bit from what? What do you want? You left me alone the whole time I was setting up, and now you want attention. I wanted to do this video outside because I wanted this to start off on a mellow, relaxed, cool tone, because that isn't necessarily where this video is gonna stay. But I guess you guys have heard these two barking in the background of so many videos that at this point, really, they're just members of the cast anyway, so maybe they just needed to show up at this point, I don't know. Oh yeah? Is that so? So anyway, the first of these highlight clips that I was putting together was from a stream where I talked a little bit about the Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind DLC. I was gonna put it together with some footage from the Remind DLC to accompany what I was talking about, and it was gonna be a fun time and that was gonna be it. But after I'd kind of put that much of it together, I thought to myself, this video doesn't really have full context. I see people sometimes who have even watched our other Let's Play videos and they get a little bit confused sometimes about my points. So I realized maybe I need to clarify some of the points that I made in this. Because basically the points that I was talking about were things that don't make sense, like logical, oh thank you, now you're out of frame, thank you, just sitting on my feet, that's fine. Basically logical issues, things that don't quite make sense in the Remind DLC, that type of stuff. But really, if you've watched my stuff by now, hopefully you know that my interests are almost always more so with narrative, with character, with storytelling, that sort of thing. So I set out to try and say, okay, just in case somebody watches this and they don't get that this isn't what's the most important thing to me, I'm going to record a little postscript, just a little extra dialogue at the end where I'm going to kind of clarify some of my points, explain why I talked about this stuff, and why it's not really the most important thing in the world, but, you know, and what is more important to me. This led to some problems, because I started talking and recording this voiceover and this extra, what I was hoping would be a short little postscript, and it kind of kept going and going and going, and I didn't know what the out was. I didn't know where to stop it. So I recorded that for a while. I worked on that for like a day or two. Then I quit and decided I really didn't like most of it, and I deleted like 90% of it and started re-recording it. I went and found another bit from the stream that was earlier on in that same stream that I thought, well, this bit will actually kind of add a little bit of clarity to why we discussed the things that we discussed as well. So I decided to include that in the actual stream highlight part so that maybe I wouldn't have to record as much for the postscript. Then the postscript just kept getting more and more out of hand as I recorded more, decided I don't like most of this, deleted 70% of it, left it alone for a week, came back, shot more, recorded more, then decided that I didn't like that either, deleted a bunch of it, left for a week, came back and recorded more, and I didn't delete any of that, I just kept recording. And this kept getting out of control as I kept just kind of recording more and more and more onto the ending of this video, until it was no longer the ending of the video, it kind of was the video. The stream highlight had become the intro to the video. This video has been effectively abandoned like 4 or 5 times, where I just thought this is such a monster. I don't even know what this video is anymore. I'm just gonna stop working on it. As you're listening to the voiceover at the end of this, there are going to be spots where you hear me finish a sentence and then start another sentence, and those sentences were recorded like 4 months apart. I think you probably won't be able to notice some of those transitions. I think I've now in the video's final state that you're currently watching, I think I've done a pretty good job of organizing it into something that at least kind of makes sense and that mostly tracks logically. I'm still not sure exactly what it is though. As I am recording this bit for you right now, I still have no idea what I am actually going to title this video. And the reason, in case you're wondering, this is going on research runs and not on the main channel or something else, is because this video isn't really the type of energy and structure that I particularly love. I guess it is what might be known to other YouTubers as a rant video. I really don't want to call it that because it was not supposed to be a rant, and I don't like that. I much prefer, if I'm releasing an edited video, for it to be scripted, for it to make a lot of sense, for it to be really clean and straightforward and well put together. And this thing is kind of messy. It's like, what, 2-3 hours long, however long it is. I don't know how long it's going to be after I add this little intro and also, you know, any other changes that I might make after I record this. I don't think I'm recording any more of it at this point. I think I've had my fill of recording new voiceover for this particular video. But anyway, in general, this is a video about the writing style of Kingdom Hearts, of modern Kingdom Hearts games, how it's different from some of the earlier entries in the Kingdom Hearts series. Okay, you hang out down there for a little while. How it's different from some of the earlier entries in the Kingdom Hearts series, how it's different from just other writing work in general. Bless you. This video is primarily examining writing and storytelling through the lens of more recent entries in the Kingdom Hearts series. We're looking at how more recent entries in the Kingdom Hearts series tell their stories compared to how older entries tell their stories, how they communicate information to the audience, how they're constructed. This video is really all over the place, covering a lot of different thoughts that I've had about the series for a while, and some things that I've only recently been able to actually articulate and kind of put together into something that makes some level, I don't know. I guess it's not so much things that I've only just been able to articulate. It's more so things that previously I might have blamed on something else. Because, you know, we all learn. We all learn as we explore ideas more thoroughly and try to come to a more complete understanding of those ideas. I know you're still there. I know you're still there. And some of these ideas, you know, I didn't quite have a complete understanding of until relatively recently. And so perhaps I'm going to communicate them a little bit better in this video than I have other times. Perhaps even worse, because I have no script and I was just rambling, and this is a patchwork video put together over the course of several months. When I started this video, my hair wasn't this long, because when I started this video, the pandemic had happened by the time that this video was started, but I had just gotten a haircut when I started working on it, so I suppose I had that going for me at least. So like I said, I still don't really know exactly what this video is. At the moment that I'm recording this, I still don't have a title. It's kind of a big, just collection of thoughts about storytelling and writing, primarily through the lens of the Kingdom Hearts video game series. I think that by now, it's generally, this video is more or less, like, has a flow to it, and it makes sense, and you know, you're not going to be completely lost while you're watching it. It's not totally patchwork. It has some kind of logic and flow and message to it, but it sure took me a while to get to that message over the length of time that it took me to put this whole thing together. And as I've talked about in videos before, I really don't like how a lot of the business of YouTube now is people just complaining about the same thing and the same franchises and whatever else over and over and over again ad nauseum. I like Kingdom Hearts. I really don't think there's like a really truly bad product in basically the entire franchise. And so putting out a 3-hour-long rant about Kingdom Hearts really isn't on, it may seem that way to some of you guys, but it's not on brand for me, or at least it's not the brand that I want to exude. So there are bits in this where I get a little bit heated, which is part of why I decided I want to start out sitting out here being a little bit more mellow, because it's not, I think people misconstrue how much I care about things sometimes, you know? It's just a video game series about anime characters running around. The fact that some of the more recent entries are kind of disappointing, and I don't really like the direction of the story, is not the biggest deal in the world. It's all about perspective, this whole life thing. So yeah, this video has taken, at this point, quite a while to put together, and hopefully one day, if I ever get around to actually making the reviews of each of the individual games in this series that I would like to do, this video will become antiquated in some regard, because I'll be able to address a lot of these points a little bit more clearly, a lot more concisely, hopefully, and to be able to address them in perhaps a more organized manner across, you know, the body of work of the entire series. That being said, even though I think I've generally put this together in a way that will hopefully be comprehensible, at least to you guys, you know, if there's anything you don't understand or anything that you feel like I didn't explain well enough, feel free to leave comments to the effect, and I'll try and clarify my points. Of course, if you do want to leave questions like asking what does he mean by that, try to maybe finish the video first before you leave those particular types of comments, because I do You know, it's long. I elaborate on a lot of the things that I say throughout the runtime of this bad boy. But like, you know, I mean, honestly, a lot of the things that I've felt about this series, I've been able to articulate more clearly because of people challenging me on things in the comment sections of the Let's Play videos that we've done so far, asking me to elaborate upon things, or people saying, I don't get it, why do you say this is bad if you don't say that this other thing is bad? And it's allowed me to come to a clearer understanding of my feelings about certain aspects of the series, about certain just aspects of storytelling and presentation and filmmaking, video game design in general. You know, I've been able to put together a lot of my ideas and understanding of these things a lot more firmly because of the dialogue that we've had back and forth over the last couple of years, myself and everybody out there in the comments. Not just on Kingdom Hearts, but on the other things we've talked about and played on the channel too. With that in mind, and I'll talk more about the future, if you will, towards the end of this video, this will probably be the last big Kingdom Hearts thing you see for a while. We're not releasing the Remind playthrough. I'm not anywhere close enough to putting together those reviews that I've talked about. We're going to be talking about and doing other things on these channels for a little while. That in no way means I have an expectation for everybody who's ever watched and enjoyed our Kingdom Hearts stuff to suddenly leap in and enjoy all of the other stuff that we've ever produced. You know, I get that. Obviously, there are plenty of YouTubers that I like who talk about, you know, Let's Players or whatever, who I watch a lot of things that they do, but there are certain games I'm just not interested in. And, you know, that's fine. I get that. But just, like, I hope that you can understand that that we can't do this forever. Look at the other Kingdom Hearts YouTubers, if you will, and the way that they are just absolutely scrambling for something, anything to be the content right now. It's like there's no... I don't want to talk about the stuff that I've already said at this point, you know, ad nauseum forever. Eventually, I want to take all the stuff that I've talked about, clarify some of it, elaborate upon some of it, put it in very nice, well put together packages. And if I ever get the ability to stream back, as I've talked about previously, maybe we'll stream Kingdom Hearts 1 for funsies, just kind of as a look back, now that we kind of have the rest of the series in our rear view. Or, again, the rest of the saga. I'm gonna say the end of the series a couple of times in this video. I mean the end of the saga. I know that there are going to be more games, but regardless, Kingdom Hearts 3 presented itself as a finale in many ways, so, you know, that's perhaps neither here nor there. But anyway, this has been a extremely long prelude for an already way overly long video. In fact, I just repeated a lot of things that I've already recorded that are going to be in the video later. This video continues to be an absolute monstrosity that probably should have been killed off months ago, but whatever. Here's me talking about Kingdom Hearts for 3 hours. It doesn't make sense by the game's own internal logic, but who cares? It's a cool moment. People get, I think people tend to misconstrue some of my criticisms of Kingdom Hearts and think that I'm just upset because it doesn't make sense, but it's because, no, I always care about character stuff and drama first, but now Kingdom Hearts doesn't. And if there's no, the main, like, okay, this is the problem, right? Okay, let's look at the original Star Wars. If you really want to look into this in some level of detail, if you go to, like, you know, YouTuber asshole levels of scrutinization on the original Star Wars, you can pick it apart just like you can the other movies. Because you go, okay, if Darth Vader's so strong, why didn't he go in first? If all the stormtroopers are coming through one door, how is it that the good guys didn't just shoot them all coming through that one door? Why didn't they throw in, like, tear gas or something like that? If Darth Vader's got a lightsaber and he can do this and throw people around like he does in Rogue One, why didn't he come through first? He's supposed to be threatening. He comes in last, afterwards. Just because he's wearing black, that doesn't mean he's threatening. Why does he pick up the guy and choke him with his hand and throw him against a wall if he can do this with his hand and force choke him? Better yet, later on we see Obi-Wan do this and control somebody's mind. Why doesn't Darth Vader just do this and control somebody's mind? Why doesn't he make Leia tell him where the plan is, or at least try? He calls in a robot with a needle instead of doing this after we just saw Obi-Wan do this. Why doesn't he do that? Why does Luke, how does the sand person sneak up on Luke? Was he not listening? Did he not have ears with which to listen? C-3PO and R2-D2 were both there. Why didn't they warn him that the sand person was coming? Can R2 doing like, wasn't R2 like doing scans of things?
No. That's ridiculous.
How does Luke, living on a poor moisture farmer place, how does he own a tea whatever, like the basically like a crop duster that he flies around? Why does he have that? How do they have the money for him to have one of those things and fly around and shoot womp rats in a valley? But you're engaged enough with what's happening in the narrative dramatically that you don't notice these things. Then you go to the Phantom Menace, and it's like, because what's happening in the original Star Wars is very clear. In the opening crawl, there's an evil, corrupt government that is taking over the galaxy, and there are rebels who are running away from them, right? That's the plot. They have a doomsday weapon, and the rebels are trying to destroy the doomsday weapon that can blow up planets. And later on in the movie, they do blow up a planet. So we know who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, and what the stakes are, and everything is pretty straightforward. There's rebels, they're trying to kill the bad guy government. It's real straightforward. Then you get to the Phantom Menace. Okay, so the Trade Federation, this is just the opening credits, the opening crawl, before the movie's even started. Okay, so there's a corporation that the Trade Federation, and I guess they run. Do they run all space trade or just some space trade? It doesn't. They must run some space trade. There's no way they run all space trade. No, there's no way they run all. So they must run some space trade.
Then they wouldn't care about space taxes.
Yeah, they wouldn't care space taxes if they had a space monopoly, right? Okay, so they must just be a space corporation that runs trade, even though we don't see any other ones. But that's fine. That's not that important. Okay, so there's taxes on trade that they're upset about. So they.
I'm wondering why there are taxes on trade, though, when the Republic's basically the only governing force in the entire galaxy.
Yeah, if the galaxy, if the Republic are the only governing force in the galaxy, why are there tariffs and taxes on trade? But what? I guess they need money. Whatever.
It's probably corrupt like Rome.
Okay, so now to protest the taxes, they're blockading a planet that seems illegal. Okay, whatever. But okay, maybe the movie will explain this. Okay, so the Republic is sending 2 emissaries to negotiate with them about the taxes, 2 Jedi Knights. So they get there, which means that the Trade Federation got what they wanted. They got the Republic to come to the table to talk about the taxes and to discuss the trade dispute. And then when they get there, a guy in a cloak shows up and says, "Shoot them." And you're like, "Wait, why are these 2 businessmen doing what the guy in the cloak says? Why are they assassinating government officials when they came to the table, which was what they wanted?" So I don't know what's happening.
It would have been like if Hitler at the Munich conference had just shot Chamberlain and then walked out.
So we don't know what's happening, and there's no relationship stuff going on with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. Their relationship is established. There's no friction or drama between them, so there's not much for us to engage with dramatically, and we don't really understand what's happening. Then they decide to launch an invasion of Naboo. So the Trade Federation has a private military that's sending armed troops down to a planet that is a sovereign. It's the equivalent of a nation that is part of the UN. It's a part of the Republic, right? Or it's like a state in the United States. Yeah. So they sent in troops. A private corporation has just sent in a private army to a planet, and they start putting civilians in internment camps. That's what happens in that movie. They're talking about they're sending everybody to camps, right? And their objective is to get the Queen of Naboo to sign a treaty that will make their invasion legal. A couple of things come to mind. Number one, how will this help them with the taxes? All they will have accomplished is invading one planet.
Which probably is super costly.
Which is very costly, and it won't do anything about the taxes. Are they hoping to hold the Republic hostage and make the Republic, like, say, okay, we'll lift the taxes if you leave Naboo alone? But, like, why would they just leave them alone and let them go? Why wouldn't they tax them more because of this? Typically, when someone is misbehaving, governments punish them to discourage them from doing it. And even if they get the Queen to sign a treaty saying that the invasion is legal, won't it just be legal on Naboo? Won't it still be a violation of the Space Geneva Convention
that's the other thing.
For a private corporation to invade a planet and arrest its leadership and put them in internment camps?
So what's their plan? Because even if it's made legal, won't the Senate send an investigative council to Naboo, and won't they talk to the civilians who were forcibly put in camps at gunpoint, who say this private corporation put us in camps at gunpoint? So what's the plan? Is it because the guy in the hood told them to do it? Why are they doing what the guy in the hood told them to do? And so far, all that's happened is Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, who have no drama or friction, have met a guy named Jar Jar Binks that they basically get along with but are slightly annoyed by, and they go to the city and they rescue the Queen, and nothing is happening with any of the characters, and I don't know what the objective is, so I'm just thinking about all these things that don't make sense. And that's the difference. Here's the other immediate comparison, right? Let's look at Infinity War, Endgame. We need to use time travel to accomplish a very specific mission.
Let's not explain it.
How does the time travel work, movie? It doesn't matter. Dude, it doesn't matter. Just roll with it. It works. It works. Don't worry about it. Just roll with it. That's the movie telling me, oh, okay, so don't worry about it. Just care about what's happening dramatically with all these characters, wrapping up character arcs that have been developing for 15 years. Got it. Okay, I'm engaged with the characters and not worrying about the lore. Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance says, okay, we're introducing time travel now, 15 years into our story. Here's 6 minutes of cutscenes of young Xehanort explaining the mechanics of time travel in explicit detail.
That don't make no sense.
And then they break the rules immediately. Also, let's look at why this is also really important. Because people, this is just a larger thing about, because people always go like, oh, why did they put time travel into the story? Time travel is bad. Time travel ruins everything. And that's not the case, because then you turn around and say, well, what about Terminator? What about Back to the Future? What about Steins Gate? What about Avengers Endgame? And this is the difficulty, right?
Yeah.
That you stare down is, okay, so why does time travel work sometimes and other times it doesn't? And it's because if time travel is introduced there are a couple of reasons that time travel can be introduced into a story. Number one, time travel creates the problem, right? That's Back to the Future. That's Terminator, right? Time travel exists in the story as a specific vehicle to create the drama that the entire story is now going to center around. Time travel allows the Terminators to come back in time and creates an unstoppable killing machine in the 80s that under-equipped characters have to deal with. Time travel sends Marty McFly back to the 50s, and he has to find a way to get back home and get his parents to fall in love and unknowingly alter the future, right? It's the source of the plot of the movie. Alternatively, time travel is the only way to solve the problem. Avengers Endgame is an example of this. Time travel is we need the Infinity Stones, and they've been destroyed. How do we get them back? Time travel. That's the only solution that we have. We got to use time travel to get the stones back. That's the only way to solve the problem of this narrative. Steins Gate is kind of a mixture of the problems exist because of time travel and can only be solved because of time travel. Let's look at Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. What does the time travel accomplish? Well, we've already introduced in Coded that if you kill a nobody and a heartless, the original person is reformed, right? So we already have all of the original organization members and Xehanort coming back. That's already established. So what does time travel actually afford us in Dream Drop Distance? It lets us have young Xehanort in the story. It lets us have Ansem, Seeker of Darkness in the story, and it lets us have Xemnas in the story. What do?
Have crappy boss battles.
They have cool boss battles.
They're fine,
They have cool boss battles with cool music. But what do they do to the story?
Nothing.
If you removed those 3 from the story, what changes?
Well, it's just 3 less Xehanorts who could be 3 guys.
They could be somebody else.
Yeah,
They could be other characters. You could just pick other people to fill those slots.
Yeah, you could have just had Sora's final boss battle be against Xehanort, and you would have
What
had
if you
connections.
What if you removed Xehanort, Xemnas, young Xehanort, Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, Terranort, and Vanitas from Kingdom Hearts 3? What do you lose?
Well, you lose 6 of your Xehanorts, which could have just been other people.
You pick other characters, though. The only thing I can think of that you lose is that you lose an easy way to get Terra back.
Yeah.
You get a consequence-free Terra revival, because otherwise you would have had to strip him out of, Xemnas's and Ansem, the Seeker of Darkness's restored body, and he would have been aged by 10 years. So by having time travel Terranort in the story, you get to get Terra back consequence-free, which I think is lame, but that's a personal opinion. I would have preferred him and Aqua to have aged, but that's a personal dramatic thing. So as far as I can tell, the only purpose of introducing time travel into Kingdom Hearts from a dramatic standpoint is we get consequence-free Terra back in Kingdom Hearts 3, which means the only reason time travel exists in Dream Drop Distance is fan service. So that's the difference. And when I talk about rules in Kingdom Hearts not making sense, it's because the rules exist solely for the sake of themselves. They don't exist to serve the drama. When the characters in Endgame say, this is how time travel works, don't think about it too hard, we need to focus on resolving these character arcs and plot threads, then that's what happens. When characters spend 17 minutes explaining something in Kingdom Hearts, there's no relationship work or drama happening. I was talking with Joshua about this earlier, the only actual character work that happens in Kingdom Hearts 3 is the 2 scenes that Kairi and Axel get. That's the only time where there's, like, just characters talking about how they feel and developing relationship stuff. That's it. Outside of, like, the Disney stuff, but that's cheating. That's it. I wouldn't care about the lore not making sense if there was dramatic stuff to engage with. But since basically DDD, there's no dramatic stuff to engage with. That's why and you have to understand this as well. All the criticisms that I leveled at like KH2, Birth by Sleep, as we were going on through the playthroughs, I like Kingdom Hearts 2 a lot. Despite its problems. And despite the fact that I'm personally not as big of a fan of Terra, Aqua, and Ven as I am of some of the other characters in the series, and I think Birth by Sleep has some issues, I also think that's a really good game. The first game in the Kingdom Hearts series that I actively dislike in any regard is Dream Drop Distance, and I still think the gameplay in that game is fun. The problem is that Dream Drop Distance is the first game in the series that doesn't have anything dramatic going on. It doesn't have any character work happening. That's where the problems actually start. And when you get to a point where there's no character work happening and no drama, then all you have to engage with is the stuff that the story is putting in your face and telling you to care about, which is the lore. Kingdom Hearts 1 doesn't spend 10 minutes explaining anything to you. It says it doesn't even explain what the keyholes are until after it happens. Leon says, oh, if you use it's in a text box. It's not even in a fully voiced cutscene. Oh, if you point the Keyblade at the keyhole, it stops the world from being destroyed. Sora, please do that for Traverse Town and other worlds. And that's it. That's all the explanation that happens. The end of the world, there's not even a line where they explain that it's an amalgamation of all the worlds, really. You get it from environmental cues, and you get it from that little poem that's written in the lab that you find on there. And that's about it. The rest of it you have to kind of infer. The game doesn't waste its time explaining any of that kind of stuff. The only time that Chain of Memories devolves into in-depth explanation of lore and mechanics is when Naminé explains her powers, which doubles as a dramatic scene where we find out how Naminé feels and what's actually been happening and how Sora's been manipulated the whole time. So they take that scene that's giving us exposition about the lore of what's happening in the game, and they double it up and make it into exposition about character work and Naminé's backstory and drama. And so the main reason that I criticize so much in Kingdom Hearts 2 and Birth by Sleep is not because the problems in those games are really that dramatic, but it's because no one did complain about them, and they just kept getting worse until the games that are bad. That's the real reason that I talked about that stuff so much, is because I'm tracing a through line of where problems started and then kept snowballing and becoming bigger and bigger. Well, people after Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, even people who were like complete standing the game, defending it, like they were so befuddled by the ending of the game that they needed to look for, it must have been a translation error. Because in English he says I wanted to create a new world pure and bright, and it's like, well, in Japanese he said pure and blank. So he wasn't actually a fan of the dark or the light. But it's like the whole scene is him talking about how darkness spread like a plague, and the only way to fix it was to reset the galaxy. Yeah. And then the beginning of Remind is him explaining in explicit detail to the Master of Masters
how bad the darkness is.
I've gone all over the world, and I see that there is darkness everywhere. Everybody, the weak steal power from the strong, and then they create excuses for why they did it and why they deserve it. People are nice to each other, but they only do it to get things for themselves and to justify their own existences. The world is assholes. It's a very 17-year-old male thought process, which is hilarious to think that 17-year-old male Xehanort, he never changed his thought process over the next 75 years. He was just dedicated to this one idea. Is like, the only way to fix it is for me, a smart guy who understands how effed up the world is, bro, to create a new one where everything is better.
He listened to a lot of mid-90s music. Just a lot of it.
But a couple of times people were like, hey, play Remind, it explains everything. Hey, play Remind, it ties up the loose ends. And I replied to both of them with just, no, it doesn't. And then towards the end, I was like, screw it, whatever, who cares? And I started typing, and it's like, my favorite part in the Remind DLC was when Roxas, Axel, and Xion had to beat up the bad guys to get their slave brands
mark.
back. They needed to get their slave
Otherwise,
brands
they
back,
couldn't be friends
or else they
anymore.
couldn't be friends anymore. They needed the connection of their servitude to their masters. They needed the slave brand back that was forced upon them. My favorite part of Remind was when Terranort and Lingering Will were fighting, and Sora time travels and comes out of Lingering Will, but he doesn't have a body, so that should be impossible. He's just a disembodied heart, so how does he have a body? So that's impossible. My favorite part of the Remind DLC was when Mickey recreated the microwave hallway sequence from Metal Gear Solid 4, except it had no thematic or narrative weight and nothing was happening, and it was less visually interesting, and there was no story purpose to it, and it was more mechanically annoying, and it was like twice as long as the already extremely long microwave hallway sequence. My favorite
the
part...
microwave hallway sequence cut to other characters to like show what you were fighting for and all that. There's nothing.
My favorite part of the Remind DLC is when they're like, oh, Shion came back because Vexen wrote some notes about her. So we took those and we made Shion come back, even though the whole issue was that her memories are tied up inside of Sora and whatnot. Also, Vexen died in Chain of Memories before Shion had self-actualized, so all of his notes on Shion would have been on her base form. So why did she like, no, don't hurt Axel, we need him? Why did she have her voice? Why did she, when the hood came off, why'd she have hair? Why'd she have all of her memories? Did they come out of Sora? Does he not need them anymore? Did Sora lose the memories that she was based on when that happened, or did they get duplicated somehow?
I thought...
Also, did Vexen, like, he wrote down notes? How did they just make that? Also, my favorite part of the Remind DLC was that when they're explaining that they just found these notes and they made something out of it, they're like, we don't even know what this is. We don't remember her. So why did you make it? Why didn't you just find another organization member or some guy who likes power or another time-traveling version of yourselves? Why would you risk your entire plan on a wild card thing that you have absolutely no idea what it is? My favorite part of the Remind DLC is that during that conversation, they say, we don't remember who this is or anything about her. She's been completely wiped from all existence. And then 30 seconds later in the cutscene that was in base Kingdom Hearts 3,
I remember.
in the cutscene that's in base Kingdom Hearts 3, Xemnas says, oh, that's right, you guys were friends. Because as it was written in Kingdom Hearts 3, Sayax and Xemnas did remember her, but they forgot about that, even though it happened 30 seconds later. My favorite part of Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind DLC is that Kairi got turned into a crystal as a part of Xehanort's backup contingency plan that is never explained, and they never say what it is. My favorite part of the Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind DLC is how Kairi breaks up into a bunch of heart fragments that are located inside a Heartless, a Puzzle, a Fountain, a Dark Side, an elevator shaft, Riku and Mickey. My favorite part of the Remind DLC is how Sora and Kairi played the mobile game so they knew to drop Chirithy off with Ventus. My favorite part of the Remind DLC is when Sora points a Keyblade at Kairi and makes Naminé come out of her. So if he could do that, why didn't he point a Keyblade at himself and make Roxas come out of him? My favorite part of the Remind DLC is the part where they show all of the evil Aquas coming out of the tornado to explain, no, you see, Aqua had PTSD. That's why she froze up. Instead of, putting a scene in the base game where Aqua was nervous and she froze up and people were like, is everything okay, Aqua? To set up that she wasn't on her A game. No, don't you see? It made sense. You just, now we've explained it. She had PTSD.
That was one of
Duh!
I'm sorry, in base KH3 when that happened, I mean, it's obviously in the playthrough, but I think that was one of the funniest moments in my gaming life. I wasn't even playing, and it was still just, I couldn't believe I was watching. Why did she just give up?
My favorite part of the Remind DLC is when they realized, oh wait, crap, our animations in the first game sucked, and in the base game sucked, and they animate a bunch of new fight scenes. They're actually well animated. It's like they had time and money, or maybe they hired new animators, I don't know, because all of a sudden the action scenes in Remind are actually pretty good. And so they animate an action scene where Kairi's fighting Xemnas, and she's like kicking the crap out of him, and she breaks his swords, and she's actually kind of doing well, and then 30 seconds later he grabs her by the wrist and he teleports away, and she dies. My favorite part of the Remind DLC was the part where the Terra, Aqua, and Ventus open a portal and go to the Realm of Darkness. Number one, the place where Aqua's traumatized PTSD from. Number two, the place that we just established you can only get to if you have the Kingdom Key D, or the Kingdom Key W, I guess as it is now called. Remember how the reason that they said we couldn't go help Aqua, but now we can. Okay, so what changed in 0.2? What's changed, Mickey?
Okay.
Oh, you have the Kingdom Key D, which you've had for the last year? Why didn't you go help Mickey? Why didn't you go help her? And then 30 seconds after Chip and Dale explained to you in Kingdom Hearts 3 that the Kingdom Key D can open a portal to the Realm of Darkness, and that's the only way to get in. Then Sora finds the Keyblade that Aqua had in the Realm of Darkness, and he uses it to open a portal to the Realm of Darkness. And then in the Remind DLC, Terra, Aqua, and Van all touch the tips of their Keyblades, and it opens a portal to the realm of darkness.
Jacob, let's take a break and listen to the music. I don't think this is cheering him up, guys. I tried.
My favorite part of the Remind DLC was when Naminé showed up and said, Sora, what are you doing? And he said, I'm saving Kairi. And then she disappeared, and she was only there to be in the trailers. My favorite part of the Remind DLC was when Lingering Will just died. He just died. He just got hit with a sword and he fell apart. That isn't that important, that's just silly. That was just funny when he just Lingering Will died. My favorite part of the Remind DLC is when Terranort goes, darkness awaits you! And the darkness hits time-traveling Sora, who came out of Lingering Will to fight Terranort. And he goes, darkness awaits you. And then it cuts to black, and there's a loading screen, and then you're back as past Sora in the labyrinth going to the boss fight, and the scene they didn't know how to end the scene, so they just cut away. And what happened? What happened? My favorite part of the Remind DLC is when Sora goes inside of himself and talks to Roxas, and Roxas is like, you just see the stained glass, and Roxas' voiceover comes in and says, I have a plan. And Sora says, okay, wait for my signal. And then it cuts back to reality, and there's like 30 seconds of cutscene, and then Sora runs forward with the Keyblade, and then it flashes back to 30 seconds ago, and now Roxas and Sora are both there fully animated, and Roxas says, I have a plan. And Sora says, okay, wait for my signal. And they go into slightly more detail about the plan, but they still don't explain what the plan is, they just go into slightly more detail, and then it cuts back to reality, and Sora goes, now! And he jumps up, and he attacks Xemnas, and Xemnas grabs him and throws him across the arena, and Roxas goes, huh? Oh no! And then he runs, like he missed the signal!
This is better music than the game.
What happened? Roxas, that was the signal, buddy!
Oh no. That's the signal.
Kaka! 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 That's the signal!
Oh god.
My favorite part of the Remind DLC was when time-traveling Sora is in Scala Ad Kylum, and real Sora is over there, and Xehanort shows up, who I guess is also time-traveling?
I think so.
And he says, haha, Sora, you'll never save Kairi. Even though it doesn't matter? Because the fact that Sora is here is because he's already lost in the future, so he's just doing it to spite Sora, I guess? But Mickey said, but telepathic...
It's like Waluigi holding a princess and going...
But telepathic Mickey talked to time-traveling Sora and told him that he crystallized Kairi because of his backup plan.
Oh my God.
But they never explain what the backup plan is.
No.
So was he saying, haha, Sora, you'll never get your girlfriend back because of the backup plan? And then just Sora beat it and so it didn't matter what the backup plan was? My favorite part of the Remind DLC was when Kairi and Sora fight armored Xehanort on a big platform in the sky at the same time as Sora, Donald, and Goofy are fighting Xehanort inside Scala Ad Kylum. So there were two Xehanorts. Was one of them a fake Xehanort or a time travel Xehanort or a spectral projection Xehanort? Or was the Xehanort that we fought with Sora and Kairi just his armor animated and there was nobody inside, even though it had not Christopher Lee's voice, Doc Brown.
Really? Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher Lloyd, yeah, he's the new voice for Xehanort.
Yeah, that's still so weird. But Jacob, Verum Rex versus 13, please be excited, says
My
Yus.
favorite part of the Remind DLC was when Yuzora showed up and said a bunch of stuff that doesn't make any sense so that we could all take to the forums and make more videos and generate more traffic to get people excited for the next Kingdom Hearts product. Even though we just paid $30 for this Kingdom Hearts product.
Someone just wrote DDD2 with Kairi as MC. Lol, as if.
If they did that, you know,
I mean,
I wouldn't
advance the plot.
I've seen people being like, oh, Jacob will buy it if they do a Kairi game. And it's like, no, I won't if nothing happens. I don't even like Kairi anymore. I don't like Sora or Riku or any of these people anymore. They're all assholes. If they had any brain power in their skulls whatsoever, they could have avoided the entire ending of Kingdom Hearts 3. Like, remember when Xehanort is like, you require motivation, and he kills Kairi, right? Which I assume was because he needed Sora to jump up and hit his Keyblade to make the 13th clash, right?
There was literally nothing.
Nothing would have stopped Sora. He was gonna go and attack Xehanort anyway. He was there to kill. They were there to kill the villains.
It's still hilarious to me that the only way they could give Sora motivation in that game to attack Xehanort was to.
He didn't need it. He was gonna
have
attack him anyway.
He literally just. It needed to be he Bowsered the love interest and then shanked her. It's like the most.
Remember in Final Fantasy 13 when the villain is like, if you kill me, you'll destroy the world, and they're like, F you, villain, we're gonna kill you, and then they killed him, and then the world started falling apart, and they were like, oh no! We did not foresee this! And then Vanille and Fang turn into a crystal, and it goes, and it's like, oh good, everything's fine.
Spoilers.
So it didn't matter. When in Kingdom Hearts 3, so there's two things that could possibly be going on with the Keyblade War at the ending of Kingdom Hearts 3. There's two things that could possibly be happening. Number one is every time that someone is killed, it gets us towards one of the total KO counts that we need to get the Keyblade, which is what the game leads you to assume, because every time you kill somebody, there's the cutscene of the darkness out of them, right? And it's not Xehanort leaving them because they all still have yellow eyes, and we've never seen that effect before, so the audience assumes, oh, this is Keyblade being forged, that's why it's bothering to show it to us. But then at the ending, when Sora has to jump up and clash blades with Xehanort, it's implied that perhaps that specifically was, we'll get to that in a second. Let's say that killing Kairi was the 13th KO that they needed, in which case there were only 13 total casualties required to form the Keyblade. So if the heroes had all died, would the Keyblade have not been forged? If the heroes had killed 7 of the bad guys and then left, would the Keyblade have been impossible to forge at that point? Going beyond that, okay, if maybe the 7 lights are worth 2 each, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe that way you get to 13, 14-ish number,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So maybe that they had 12, and when he killed Kairi, he actually got 2 points, so he got to 14, but that meant that he met the quota of 13 to form the Keyblade. Now that doesn't.
The freaking dark slaying quota.
Yeah. Now that doesn't make sense for a couple of reasons. Number one, what defines when this happens? Because like Braig didn't die, he ran away, so it's not a casualty. What defines it? Like, is it like you have to get them to like 10? Do you have to break their aura from Ruby? Is it designated by aura breaks?
Don't talk about Ruby.
So it's not casualties because like okay, Riku Replica didn't actually die.
Yeah.
Just he was other Riku Replica flew through him. Braig didn't die, he ran away. So okay, so let's say it was casualties. That doesn't really totally make sense because if that was the case, then the Keyblade should have been forged when they all died to the Demon Tide.
I guess.
And if that is the case, then if it is total casualties, Riku Replica didn't die and Braig didn't die, so killing Kairi still wouldn't have gotten him there. I guess if she counts for 2, then she would have gotten him there if they weren't actually at 12. But there were 12 Keyblades circling around Xehanort beforehand, so no, we had gotten to 12. So that doesn't really make sense, but whatever, it doesn't matter. But then it still raises the question of, does this mean that the heroes are stupid? Because the heroes could have just killed a couple of them and left, and Xehanort can't win. But that doesn't seem like that's the actual interpretation. It seems like what it actually is every time that the blades clashed, which raises the question of, okay, so slashing Kairi in the back didn't count. It has to be a blade touch. It has to be a clash of power, right? Okay, so why didn't he just fight Kairi? When they were all when Sora, Riku, and Mickey were fighting the 3 Xehanorts, right? Presumably the second that they met blades, like that got to the 12 count, right? Yeah. So all Xehanort needed to do was wave some smelling salts under Kairi's nose when she woke up startled and summoned her Keyblade, swing at her, and if she blocked it, then you win, right?
Yeah.
If everybody is separated in a labyrinth and they can't see each other, what is stopping each of the 13 darknesses from teleporting in, hitting Sora's sword or one of the other light's swords, and then teleporting away? Even if the heroes are smart and they know that, okay, we can't touch blades with all 13 of the guys or else that'll form the Keyblade. You've made this labyrinth, they're all separated, they don't know what's happening. Once enough of the boss fights happen, you can just have Xehanort teleport in. It's not like Sora isn't gonna defend himself. He'll raise his blade and block it, so the Xehanorts could have won like 5 minutes after they showed up. And everybody would have still been locked in the labyrinth, and they could have been at full power. None of them needed to die. They could have gotten their 13 blade clashes, the Keyblade would have been formed, and then they could have done it. On top of that, why is it that the Keyblade parts look like No Name, which is the Master of Masters Keyblade, which he developed based on the Kingdom Key, not the Kingdom Key, the Keyblade, because the Keyblade is a cosmic entity that already existed, and the Master of Masters studied it to create all other Keyblades. So, number one, why is it that as they're getting all the parts, they appear as No Names? And number two, why do they levitate around Xehanort? What's special about Xehanort? Is the particular rock that he's standing on, is that just happens to be the perfect center of the battlefield and that's where the Keyblade parts appear? Or are they coming to him somehow? Why didn't they come to Sora instead, or Riku, or Kairi for that matter, or freaking Luxord? Why did they appear right there? Why did they look like No Name? If it had been light casualties, would they have been a different Keyblade? Would it have been like, like the Starlight Keyblade, or maybe one of the Master, like the Ava's Keyblade or something like that? Why was it No Name? Like
questions.
And when he
Just
got it,
do what I say.
and when he got it and he shot Kingdom Hearts, what was he waiting for? Why didn't he blow up the universe right then? He started floating up into the sky and didn't do anything. What was he waiting for? He had it. He could win right there. He could have blown up the entire universe. You should have aimed for the head. Done. Why didn't he win? I don't understand. What happened?
No.
What happened in the ending of the game?
He shot Kingdom Hearts, and then he felt really sad because he realized he was being a bad guy. And he was like, I just want to be a good guy. And then he went to heaven. That's literally what happened.
Crossburn says, KH3 is the first game where I actually couldn't tell what was going on, mainly the Keyblade Graveyard. Every other game, I could at least tell what was supposed to be communicated to me.
Yeah, no, like, DDD is just dumb. I understood what was happening.
For me, specifically, Remind is the first piece of Kingdom Hearts media where I literally did not understand what was happening and what I was supposed to be gleaning from it. Like, it's just insane. It doesn't make any sense. It's like a fever dream. It's like a Kingdom Hearts fever dream. It's the first time I've ever legitimately felt that I walked away from a Kingdom Hearts product having not understood a good amount of what happened in it. Hello folks, Jacob here. You've just watched a heavily edited clip from a very lengthy stream, and I wanted to kind of add something in here really fast that will get lost without 3 hours of context from a larger stream. This is coming after other discussions about the Kingdom Hearts series that I think are important to understand, just in case, because I see people sometimes even who watch our Let's Plays who kind of misunderstand my points on some of these things occasionally. Whether or not the lore makes sense, or there are things that are nonsensical or are difficult to follow or whatever, is not the important part to me with the Kingdom Hearts games, or really with most stories. There are plenty of things in, for example, Kingdom Hearts 1, a game that I really like, that don't really want to make a ton of sense. If I wanted to, I could tear that game apart on a logic level, and you can with a lot of stories. The thing is, though, that when you have something to engage with in the story, with characters who are interesting, with action that is exciting and compelling, and a narrative that's pulling you along and keeping you engaged, you don't notice those things. This is why when you go and see a movie, you might not realize until after it's over, there were a couple of plot holes here and there, because if you were actually engaged with the action of the story, as long as those plot holes weren't so big that they were getting in the way of character motivations or the just minute-to-minute logic of what the characters were doing, those things don't necessarily distract so much. My problem with the later Kingdom Hearts games, and indeed the reason that many Kingdom Hearts fans have become somewhat disengaged with the later entries in the series, is because of the way that the actual story is handled. There's not really any character drama. There's no arcs. It's very lethargic. There's not high stakes. You don't feel like, oh man, what's going to happen next as the story is going on, because it all plays out in a very slow, expository way where the story is significantly more concerned with explaining how various events can occur than actually going into why the characters are doing what they are doing, or constructing a narrative where the heroes will be pushed to their limits emotionally as well as physically, though honestly, they aren't even really pushed to their limits physically that much either, like, outside the context of boss fights. So that's a video game thing that can be harder to depict than, movies and books and whatnot can get away with, where, you have to have gameplay where the player plays the game and performs well. So that's harder to depict. But with a Kingdom Hearts 1, just to stick within this series, there's tons of stuff in that game that I can tear apart that doesn't make sense, but very little of it gets in the way of the character drama, the stuff that the characters are learning, the stuff that they're going through, the stakes of what our heroes are having to overcome. When you get to Dream Drop Distance, it's almost written like a mystery story, because basically the plot of that game is the characters are given a really mundane task, and then the game says something other than that is happening, and then at the very ending, they just tell you. But with most mystery or crime stories, you have what's called a hook in writing. You have something that pulls you into the story. Somebody's been murdered if it's a detective story. We gotta steal something if it's a heist story. How are we gonna do it? Along the way, there will be complications. We'll learn things we didn't know, and the story will change up, and we'll get more and more information that eventually brings us to the conclusion dynamically. Dream Drop Distance is more or less a mystery story, but it didn't give you something to engage with on the surface level. It didn't give the heroes a compelling quest that tied into what was actually happening. It just sent them off on a mundane errand, and every now and then people would pop up and say ooga booga booga, and then at the end they explained why they were saying ooga booga booga. So with nothing else to engage with in the story, you say, okay, they better have a really good reason for saying ooga booga booga, because that's what the entire game is focusing in on. It's all building up to Xemnas sitting Sora down and explaining what's happening. So if his explanation doesn't make any sense, then the story falls apart at the seams. And that's where these later games have problems. And honestly, in the first place, exposition, lore, telling us, like, that is not a narrative. Just telling us lore about a fictional universe is not a story, but that's, we'll get to that in a second. For right now, let's labor under the assumption that just telling us information about a world that doesn't exist is actually a form of storytelling. We'll loop back around to that later, but let's say that it is. And even within that framework, that's where these games have problems, and that's where Remind has problems, because Remind, the only thing in it that I can even begin to process as an important emotional beat is like, oh, Sora he wants to save Kairi because he loves her, but number one, it can't even bring him to say that he loves her or have them interact in that way, and it's like, it's one beat. It begins at the beginning of the game. Sora says, I need to save Kairi. The other characters say, if you do that, you'll die. Sora says, I don't care. And then he saves Kairi, and he dies, and he doesn't care, and that's it. There's nothing to engage with beyond the, okay, how is Sora gonna body hop and get there? How is he gonna save Kairi? How are all of these things gonna happen? So if those things don't make sense, then it falls apart, because all the DLC is an explanation of how Sora saved Kairi, which is not an explanation we even needed, because the how he did it isn't important. It's just, all that matters is that he did it, that it's done and he died. The how doesn't factor in, it's unimportant at this point. And you have to understand that this is not a Remind problem at this point. This was originally a Dream Drop Distance problem, but now it is a series problem. Dream Drop Distance is, how are the Xehanorts going to come back? That's what the whole game is. Chi, back cover, and Union Cross originally was, how is the Keyblade War going to happen? Which we all knew from the beginning. And currently in Union Cross, the mystery is, what is happening? The mystery is literally just what is happening. There are two other smaller mysteries, not smaller mysteries, more conventional mysteries that we'll get to in a second. But looking at the what is happening mystery is a good encapsulation of the problems with modern Kingdom Hearts writing. Most of the time, a mystery story is, who's been murdered? How did this thing get stolen? Where is this missing person? And along the way, we'll get more bits of information that are like, okay, this person wasn't kidnapped, they ran away, and that adds a wrinkle to the story, right? In Union Cross, as it currently is running, it's all just a huge question mark. That the mystery is literally, we don't know what the story is. Why are there glitches? Where are we? Literally, where are we? Like, in what dimension are we? What is going on? What are these glitches that are happening? What's with the Strelitzia ghost? Who is Bees? And what is Bees? And how is Bees? And why is Bees? We don't know anything about Bees. What's the Ark? What is the Ark? Who built the Ark? How did it get here? What is the Master's plan? The Master talked about some other war that happened long ago. What is that about? What is Ava up to? She's up to something, or was up to something. What about Marluxia and Larxene and Ventus? How are they here? Is Skuld Subject X from the secret reports of Kingdom Hearts 3? There's not actually a storyline behind any of these things, and there's not an investigation. Dream Drop Distance, as we all know it now, is a game where we found out that the villains were trying to put Sora as part of their team and they reveal what their evil plan is for next time, right? But for a huge chunk of the story, if you're playing, that's what we talk about Dream Drop Distance as now that we've finished it, now that we know what happened in it. But if you were playing it for the first time, the story of Dream Drop Distance is essentially just Sora and Riku are wandering around and something is happening, but I don't know what. When Union Cross is finished, it will be the story of the master manipulating the data to alter the fates of the dandelions or something. I don't know what it is. That's the thing. I literally don't know what the story of Union Cross is yet. If we go to murder mystery stories and classic detective stories, the plot doesn't become a different story when the detective or whoever the main character is solves the mystery. Murder on the Orient Express, we gotta figure out who killed Mr. Ratchet. Chinatown, Jake's gotta figure out who hired him to follow around Evelyn's husband and why he wound up dead. Both of those stories have some pretty big twists, but the plot, what the film is about, is not fundamentally altered by the ending. And more pressingly, even if the ending did somehow completely alter the story to where just the basic logline pitch of what it's about was now rendered irrelevant, there was at least a story before you got there. With Dream Drop Distance, there is no story until you get to the twist. And that's why if you've ever heard me call Union Cross and those games anti-story, that's what I'm talking about, because nothing has happened yet. Currently in Union Cross, there are 2 mysteries that are actually real conventional mysteries with hooks that we're trying to solve. Who killed Strelitzia, which then leads into the second mystery, who is the imposter in the group who stole her documentation. But even these things are treated weird because number one, they're not the main plot. They're like, I don't know what the main plot of Union Cross is. Maybe Strelitzia's murder is instrumental to the Master of Masters' master time traveling plan of mastery. But I won't know until the game is over. So who knows if it's important or not, or if it's just a thing we're supposed to care about because we care about Strelitzia. And beyond that, there's no actual like investigation happening in the story. Every now and then we as the audience get little bits of information that the story just kind of deigns to give to us, but none of the characters internally are solving a mystery and gathering together clues for us to watch a detective at work, right? The only character in the story who is doing any kind of detective work is Brain, and his big brain detective work is, I have a piece of paper that was given to me that says the name of the culprits. And that's turned into a mystery because we have a scene where Appa says, hey, here's a list that says all the people. And we get to go, oh, he knows who it is. And then 4 weeks later, there's another update where he says to Ephemer, hey, I know that someone's a fake. And we get to go, oh. And then 4 weeks later, they say, we should do something about this. And then 4 weeks later, they say, let's call Skuld and Ven. And we get to go, oh, the only 2 people who hadn't been eliminated as suspects. Oh. And then 4 weeks later, there's another update where they're like, hey, Ven, why isn't your name on the list? Oh! And then 4 weeks later, we don't even get to see what happens next because instead we get to see Marluxia dreaming about his sister in a field. But the fact of the matter is that stuff with Brain and the elimination of suspects is like the best mystery writing the series has done in any of these games because we do actually get clues, even if the characters didn't get them. It was just stuff that the screenplay gave to the audience, because most of the time in these games, the way it works is there's something going on and it's like, oh man, how are we gonna deal with this situation? And then it just gets dealt with. Like, okay, any book, any movie, any TV show, any entertainment thing that people are engaging with, they are there, the audience is there to see characters do things. It doesn't matter if it is a heady political drama or if it is a brain-dead Michael Bay action film, okay? In the heavy political drama, you're there to see characters debate issues or try to convince people, hey, we need you to vote for this thing, we need you to support this cause or whatever. In the Michael Bay action movie, you're there to see, oh man, what kind of cool action karate move is Optimus Prime gonna do to kill all these Decepticons or whatever. You are there to see, whether it's to see characters talk or to see cool special effects action sequences, you are there to watch characters do things. That's the engagement. If it's a detective story, you want to see people solve some kind of mystery, gather clues, piece things together, see how smart they are. Crime story, you want to see people get away with something. How are they going to pull off this amazing heist? Action suspense story, we want to see the person defeat a guy or survive some kind of harrowing situation. a more like, a lower key drama or about a social situation or whatever, seeing how these characters are going to reconcile a relationship, or seeing how this person is going to win over the girl or the guy, whatever. We are there to see characters do things, okay? Whatever the pitch of the story is, that's what we're there for. And when you have a story where again, like, it doesn't matter if it's like, this is not like some kind of, this is for people who, are really, really into highbrow stuff or whatever, and this doesn't apply to stupid things. This applies to the stupidest of the stupid. This applies to comedies, okay? Even it doesn't even have to be watching somebody do something competently. It can be watching somebody do something poorly. Comedies and sitcoms are generally about characters being incredibly incompetent at doing something, right? Whether it's about them failing to do something, or whether it's about them bumbling their way through something and accidentally accomplishing something, doesn't matter. The point is that they are doing something, that they are taking some kind of forward action to accomplish something, right? Whether they mean to or not. Old school like Donald Duck Goofy cartoons and Mickey Mouse cartoons, a lot of them involve slapstick comedy where the characters are trying to do one thing and they accidentally wind up doing something else. But they're doing something. You're watching the characters accomplish something. Inspector Clouseau in the Pink Panther movies, right? He wants to be this great detective, but he's a complete imbecile. So he, stumbles around through all of these different scenes, and by the end of the movie, he manages to somehow trip his way often into solving the crime or catching the murderer or whatever needs to be done. But like it's accomplished in spite of his bumblings and failings, right? But we still enjoy watching him do things, watching him attempt to do things. Any sitcom is like this as well. When you say like, oh, that's such a, if you watch, whatever sitcom, like, oh, that's such a George Costanza moment. That's such a Seinfeld moment or whatever, right? When something happens in real life or somebody does something, it's because you're saying to yourself, oh, that's how George Costanza or Jim from The Office or anybody would react to this situation. And I know that because I've watched them react to situations like this. In Kingdom Hearts and other bad stories like Kingdom Hearts, I shouldn't be directing it at Kingdom Hearts all the time as if Kingdom Hearts is the worst thing ever. In Kingdom Hearts, and to pick a random example, Ruby, let's say, why not? In these shows, in these things, here's what happens. The characters say, here's a situation that we have to deal with. How are we gonna deal with it? And instead of watching them struggle and try things and fail, and then maybe they finally at the end figure out a solution to the problem, instead they say, how are we gonna do this thing? Wring their hands over it for the entire length of an adventure, and then when it comes time for them to deal with the situation, a laser beam from the sky, generated by bad screenwriting, appears and deals with the problem. Oh wow, a character had a power that had never been mentioned before and solved the problem. Oh wow, this other element of the story that we never talked about before showed up and saved us. Thank you, bad screenwriting. And even in Remind, Union Cross, gosh, I hate these names. Even in Union Cross, where sure, the screenplay does give us, okay, so I guess that eliminates Marluxia as a suspect and eliminates Brain as a suspect. It still is just like, okay, and then Brain just knows the answer and tells the answer to the audience. It's not like he had a scene where he cross-examined Ventus and was like, hey, Ventus, remember that one line of dialogue you said that one time? How did you know that? Didn't you said the wrong thing there? Haha, I caught you in a lie. But instead, he's just like, hey, Ven, I have a sheet of paper that says you're evil. Anyways, I'm talking about this because Union Cross is such an extreme example that it makes it the easiest to demonstrate what the problems are. Kingdom Hearts 3 is not nearly as bad as Union Cross at this. It actually does have hooks. It has things that it tells the audience, okay, this is what you're engaged with. How are we gonna save all of the heroes and bring them back to be part of the group? Okay, that's what we're engaged with in this story. How are they gonna do it? Across the last 5 games, we've set up all of these intricate roadblocks that are gonna make it difficult to get Shion back and to get Terra back and to get Ven and Roxas and, even Aqua, because we've spent several games like, how do you get into the Realm of Darkness and out of the Realm of Darkness? It's seemingly impossible. And so you go into Kingdom Hearts 3, okay, how are we gonna solve all these problems? Well, when it comes time for the scene for the problem to be solved, it'll just be solved, and then we'll just move on. Okay, what else is there? Well, we've gotta beat the Xehanorts in a fight. But wait, if we fight the Xehanorts, doesn't that play into their hand and help them win? Don't worry about it. Okay, let's go fight the Xehanorts. Oh no, we've played into their hand and their plan worked. Now what? Portal, laser beam, kill. Okay, did it, fixed now, and there's nothing else going on other than these things. So when those things don't make sense, it's like, well, then why did they write it? Who was the writer? What happened? If there's nothing else going on, if this is all that they wrote and they couldn't even figure out how to make the only things that they were writing make sense, and that's all there is to be engaged with in the story, then that's it. There's not interesting action scenes happening. There's not interesting character drama playing out. There's just the literal events that are occurring, and the literal events don't make sense. And the important thing to understand is that this is not a Kingdom Hearts franchise problem. This is a recent problem, because people will ask in comment sections, why are you here? Why are you doing this? Clearly, you just need stories that make sense all the time. You just can't enjoy stories like this. Here's a good example of what I'm talking about. Chain of Memories. I'm on the record. I like Chain of Memories. Did a playthrough of it. I enjoy that game. I'm a fan. Why doesn't Marluxia just tell Naminé to wipe Sora's memory at the beginning of it? His plan doesn't make sense. He's like, okay, Naminé, trick Sora into thinking that I'm holding you hostage so that he'll want to kill me. That way he'll work for me. His plan doesn't make sense. Why doesn't he just have Naminé wipe Sora's memory and then just, okay, let's just work from there. Then we'll just figure out a new thing. It'll take a while, but that's it. Even at the ending of the game, he actually says, well, okay, plan A didn't work. Naminé, wipe his memory. It's clear that like this is gonna be a really time-consuming process or whatever, but it's like, I mean, what bus are you catching, Marluxia? Are you on the clock here? Obviously, there are some reasons in universe for this. He's trying to be stealthier because the organization, like he's trying to trick them and turn Sora into his weapon specifically, not into theirs. But then if you go beyond that, why doesn't Marluxia, Xemnas say, not Xemnas, Vexen, God, why doesn't Vexen say, just wipe his memory and then I'll do science on him, right? It's like, we know that Naminé can wipe people's memories and then immediately have them up and running with a new personality because she does it to Riku Replica. Riku Replica had his own self-actualized personality. She snapped her fingers and then he thought he was the real Riku, right? So maybe she got to cheat because she got to base that off of original Riku or whatever, so it took less time than writing a perfectly new Sora who served Marluxia would have. But the point is still, the Chain of Memories, you can absolutely tear it apart on a logic level. So why don't I? Because if the story didn't happen the way that it happened, then you don't get the story of Naminé. You don't get this character who is so sad and lonely and by herself that when Marluxia says, hey, trick Sora into thinking that he loves you, she says okay, even though she knows that it's wrong. You don't get this story building up to a moment where she gives Sora the choice of being with her, going back to the way that he used to be, and Sora saying, make me like I was. And then she says, right, of course, you want to be with the people who are really important to you, and just this tearing her apart on an emotional level. If okay, Kingdom Hearts 1, they introduced the plot point of all of the worlds being separated before this happened, and when we fix it, they'll all go back to being separate. And that wound up being a stupid plot point as the series went on, because then every single game has to come up with an excuse for how do we get around the barriers. for the first game, where it ended with, Leon and Aerith and Yuffie saying, after you do this, we'll never see each other again, and creating the further thing of when Sora makes the sacrifice, not only is he able to see his friends again, but when he decides to stay behind and go and try to find Riku, it might mean that he can never see Kairi again. Even that lore thing that doesn't really make a ton of sense and that winds up creating problems for the series long term works narratively and emotionally for the first game. With all of the things in those games that are silly, that are JRPG-y, that are Kingdom Hearts-ish, as if we can now call it that, it is working towards something specific. It has narrative intent beyond confusing the audience or whatever. It has an emotional purpose. It actually relates to the journeys that the characters are going on. Now, let's turn our gaze towards Dream Drop Distance. Oh, there's a bunch of Xehanorts and they're all time traveling and they need to have 13 of them fight 7 of us to form a thing that will help Xehanort get Doomsday Weapon. Okay, and this is in service of what? This is in service of making Sora go on a certain character arc in Dream Drop Distance? Well, no, it's all at the ending, so it doesn't actually impact him at all. Okay, then it's about presenting a temptation of power for Riku, that he could be part of Doomsday Team. No, they actually never try to tempt him and indeed just want to kill him and get rid of him. Because all of the explanation is at the ending of the game. What is happening in the story of Dream Drop Distance is a secret until the ending of Dream Drop Distance and is unable to impact the first 25 hours of Dream Drop Distance. So what happened in the first 25 hours of Dream Drop Distance? Oh, nothing. Okay. So, all right, okay, so I'm supposed to be engaged with the ending. Yes. Okay, what happens in the ending? The villains show up and they explain their plan. Okay, so I'm paying attention to what the villains are saying and it doesn't make sense. And again, even if it did make sense, this isn't a history class. This is a fictional story. The facts of how they're gonna do the thing is not a story. And even that's not fair because history is really interesting, but that's because it's interesting when it's about people doing things. When you have a bad teacher who's just like, here are the numbers and the dates and the names, then you're not engaging with action, it's really uninteresting. When you double that up and make it about a fictional universe, it's like, why do I care about this class? And you have the character who sounds like this, giving all of the exposition. Xemnas's voice, his indeed thing. It worked in Kingdom Hearts 2 when he was a big bad who sat on a chair and he really didn't have that much dialogue. There would be other people arguing about things and then at the end he would say, indeed, Sora, evil plan. Then it worked, It's just, it's deep, he sounds in charge. It's a little bit sexy, since he's not gonna get shirtless like Billy Zane did in the first game, and he's not as immediately attractive as Marluxia. You need a little bit of sexiness in there. Kingdom Hearts villains gotta be sexy, just like Final Fantasy villains. The voice kinda works. Until you get to a game where he's expected to do 7-minute long exposition dumps, and he talks like this. It's like sitting in the most boring history class you've ever been to. On the 3rd of May, 1944, the Allied forces continued to prepare for the D-Day landings at Normandy. Meanwhile, Churchill invented a new type of sandwich while on the phone with FDR. Yes, you in the 3rd row with your hand raised. I will now hear your question. Professor Xemnas, is this really super duper important to understanding all of the details? Not really. But so I guess you're going somewhere though. Indeed. Well, could we maybe, lunch period is in like 5 minutes and you've been going for quite a while now. Could we maybe skip forward a bit? Silence. Cursed fools. You know nothing. And then the bell rings and we all leave class because holy shit. And then we get to go to lunch and listen to some cool music for a while, and it's like, oh, great, finally, I feel so much better. And then we go back into science class, and the professor walks up to the chalkboard. I am Xehanort from the most distant past. I traveled through time to come here today to help other people travel through time. Oh, God! It's like, I wouldn't care. Well, number one, it'd be better if the script was a bit tighter and neater or whatever, but I wouldn't even care about all of this stuff if it was setting up for something really interesting, if it was getting us towards finding out, okay, so why does Xehanort feel the way that he does? Why is he obsessed with all these super duper complex plans? Why has he made this complex plan? Is he trying to screw with one of the heroes in some important way? Are we gonna see some interesting relationship stuff between the characters? There's nothing in Dream Drop Distance that stops it from being a game where Sora and Riku go on an adventure together and they realize that maybe there's some unresolved feelings about how, they tried to kill each other a year ago. There's nothing stopping it from being a game where we find out more about, Xehanort's past and how he felt as young Xehanort and why he's doing the things that he's doing now. There's nothing stopping it from being a game where Kairi comes along on the training mission and Sora is conflicted and doesn't really want her to be there because all this time he's been fighting to try and keep her safe, and now she's putting herself in harm's way and he's not sure how he feels about that. All of the crazy lore would be fine if there was an interesting story accompanying it, or better yet, if the crazy lore somehow complemented an interesting story, but it's just the lore and nothing else. To be clear, because people are gonna be pedantic about this, if you're typing a comment about, ew, I don't like any of those pitches, they all sound gross, that's not the point. I was improving them. That's not, the specific pitches that I had for the story there are not important. My point is that the lore that Dream Drop Distance was trying to communicate did not somehow prevent that game from doing stuff with its characters. And this is what really irks me when people leave comments or messages on my videos, or sometimes people will just talk about this in general with the series and just the audience in general, but people will leave stuff like, oh, Jacob and other people, clearly this series just isn't for them because they need stories that make total, complete sense all the time and are logically flawless and completely internally consistent, and that's not what Kingdom Hearts is about. Kingdom Hearts is about the character drama and the feelings and the emotions, and so they clearly, the story just isn't for them. And that's hilarious to me because that's exactly the stuff that I do value more so than the logic, is the character drama, is the feeling of it, is what journeys the characters are going on. And arguing that Kingdom Hearts is more about that is insane to me, because the reason I don't enjoy modern Kingdom Hearts stories is because none of that stuff is there. And this is more just generally about the way that I talk about these games, but it's like, it becomes very difficult to criticize something on anything other than a logic level when it strips itself of all other content. Like, if there's nothing else to be invested in, you can't criticize a story and character arcs that don't exist except to say that they don't exist, and there's only so much that you can elaborate on that, though I'm certainly trying to disprove that with this video, apparently. And this is not a problem that is unique to Kingdom Hearts. This is a thing that often happens with franchises when they just go on for too long. This is the logical conclusion of sequels, because characters are usually created to go on a specific journey, to populate a specific story and learn a specific lesson. And when you drag them further than they were designed to go, you get to stories where you don't have anything left to do with the people, so you just have to start doing stuff with the rules around them. And that's how you get to stuff like Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, Metal Gear Solid 4, and at this point, the conclusion of the Kingdom Hearts series, though for the record, I think that Metal Gear Solid 4 actually has a lot better emotional stuff going on than the Kingdom Hearts ending of the series. But that's neither here nor there. If you go and look at the really successful, well-done sequels to movies and books and stuff like that, you'll usually find that a consistent unifying factor is that they find a new thing for the main characters to have to deal with, a new journey for them to go on that may not have necessarily been explicitly established in the original because there may have not been a plan for a sequel. Alien to Aliens, Ripley has to kind of become a leader and take charge in Aliens. Shrek to Shrek 2. Shrek 2 is less about the specifics of Shrek and his relationship with Donkey and Fiona, and more about him being concerned about societal pressure and if he has to change himself to make Fiona happy. Back to the Future 2 and 3 introduce totally new aspects of Doc Brown and Marty's characters that weren't there before, as well as also just playing around more with the mechanics of the world that were introduced in the previous film. Another good example that I like is the Uncharted series, because people are sometimes down on a pretty significant aspect of Uncharted 4, which I think has the best narrative, at least, of any of the games in the Uncharted series, but it all hinges around the main character, Nate. He had an older brother that just never got mentioned for 3 games, and also a spin-off game on the Vita, and also novels and a comic book and stuff like that. Is this a retcon that his brother just showed up out of nowhere? Kind of, but it's in service of the very specific character drama that they want to tell with Uncharted 4, so it works. And this is something that I actually knew people who got really, really hung up on Sam showing up in Uncharted 4 and were like, I can't get over the fact that this guy just showed up out of nowhere, that they just made up this plot element. Whereas it's something that I had absolutely no problem accepting, because it was just a cog in the story that it needed to function, that needed to be there for them to explore this aspect of Nathan Drake's character. So when people come at me and are like, oh, you just need everything to make sense all the time, you should care about the emotion, it's like, no, it's actually the complete opposite of that. I'm 100% engaged with the emotional stuff and can overlook things like that if it is getting me to a cool story. But KH just kind of isn't doing that anymore. But that's, like I said, just partially the logical conclusion of sequels. Characters are designed for very specific stories. Sora had an arc in Kingdom Hearts 1 that more or less concluded when he decided to sacrifice himself to save Kairi. And since then, he had an arc in Chain of Memories, but that was kind of because he was a different Sora at that point, and he's essentially been in a holding pattern ever since then. Riku had an arc in Chain of Memories. He kind of had an arc in Kingdom Hearts 2, but a lot of it was off-screen, other than those admittedly really awesome scenes between him and Sora at the ending of Kingdom Hearts 2, and then he's been in kind of a holding pattern. But then you look at some other characters, like, for example, Roxas, who had kind of a specific purpose in Kingdom Hearts 2 of more or less just kind of being a punching bag. He doesn't really have an arc per se, as much as he is a vessel to take in pain and make the audience feel sad. He kind of has an arc of like coming to accept his place within Sora and coming to peace of like, okay, so I do have a purpose in this world, kind of. But then they introduce new elements of his character and a new arc for him in 358 Days Over 2. They do the same thing for Axel. They create new purpose for those characters. They breathe new life into them. But then by the ending of Dream Drop Distance, by the ending of Days, they've been now designed for this story, so they have once again kind of outlived their usefulness. Terra, Aqua, and Ven are all designed to go on kind of specific journeys in Birth by Sleep, and they more or less come to the logical conclusions of their characters by the ending of Birth by Sleep, other than the fact that they are unhappy, but not because of... None of the characters in Birth by Sleep are unhappy at the end of the game because of unrest within their souls. They're unhappy because of the literal circumstances that they find themselves in, of possessed, in a coma, trapped in hell, whatever, which is what I'm getting at when I talk about, like, okay, when the characters are rescued, all you get is the kick of seeing them rescued, because the characters don't have anything else to do now other than getting out of specifically the physical circumstances that are confronting them. There's no longer established emotional turmoil for them to be going through. And certainly an author could create new stuff for these characters to have to deal with in sequels. That's, how good sequels usually work. But number one, a lot of these Kingdom Hearts characters are a little bit one note and simplistic. Now, that doesn't mean you can't literally invent new stuff for them. You can totally do that, but then you get to Dream Drop Distance, the game where I started to feel pretty uneasy about this entire Kingdom Hearts thing, because we've got a game where the two main characters of the series, Sora and Riku, are the leads, and the writers have absolutely nothing for them. And I don't want to sound like it's easy to just invent new purpose for characters that also works. Like, I was coming up with those off-the-cuff pitches for other things that could have been going on in Dream Drop Distance a second ago. And they weren't very good. So like, it's not easy to just snap your fingers and have a new business for a character who was invented to have a very specific business that you've already dealt with. Riku had to overcome his selfishness and flaws and become a better person. Sora had to rise to the occasion and be a hero and be self-sacrificing and all that kind of stuff. And once they've both done those things, that's what those two characters were created to do. So what else do you do with them now? You gotta invent new stuff from scratch, and then you risk the audience saying, okay, but where were these traits before now? Why are they suddenly having these new issues and these new flaws that they have to overcome, even though they didn't exist previously? Now, all of that being said, I do have to try and express at minimum my opinion and impression of the situation here. I don't think Tetsuya Nomura is a particularly good, stick with me, screenwriter or story organizer. I like Tetsuya Nomura. I think he's a good artist. I think he's a good director. I think he has clear visions for strong imagery and cutscenes and contrasting colors and ideas and themes and all these different things, but I don't think he's a very good writer, and that's not just writing dialogue, that's everything that goes into writing. And we've found out relatively recently in the Kingdom Hearts 3 Ultimania interviews and stuff that he has essentially been ghostwriting every game in the series since Days. Kingdom Hearts 1, Chain of Memories, and 2 were handled by other writers, and he's essentially been writing the actual scripts and dialogue for every game since then, with some other writers helping to proofread his work and punch it up a little bit here and there, is if I'm understanding the interviews that he's conducted correctly, but he's kind of intentionally vague about exactly how the whole process has worked behind the scenes. But when I actually look at the games that he's written from Days onward, the only game that has a bunch of scenes where the characters, where like the friendship characters we're supposed to care about sit around and talk with each other about their relationship, and we just get a feel for who these people are, is Days. And I think that Days has all of those scenes where the characters talk because they were structurally imposed upon Nomura, because that entire game is essentially an allegory for working a crappy office job and then after work every day going to the bar and knocking back a couple of beers with your only friends from the office and talking about how bogus your job is, how much you hate your boss, and how much you wish you could leave Tokyo and move out to the countryside. And then at the end, it turns out that the boss is actually, even though he's been telling you this whole time that you're special and you're being groomed for greatness and leadership and you're very important to this organization, it turns out actually you're just another cog in the machine, and we're going to replace you with a younger, more useful worker after we've worked you to the bone and you're no longer capable of going on anymore, and you've outlived your usefulness. The whole thing is this really on the nose, and not in a bad way, corporate allegory. But I think that the scenes where they sit around and eat ice cream are just because the structure of that game was do missions, then the characters will sit down and talk with each other. And that game has a quality to it that a lot of older JRPGs have, which is that the characters are not really all that well written, but you spend so much time with them that you kind of get over a curve and you start to get really into them. A lot of older JRPGs, the characters are not exactly stellar, but you spend so much time with them that you really get to like these people and you like their dynamic. And with Days, not every single mission, but there are so many scenes where it's just the characters sitting around and talking about nothing that you really do get. You start vibing with them. You know what I mean? You just kind of start vibing with Roxas and Axel and Shion by the end of the whole thing. But then you move on to the other games, and it kind of seems like Nomura just doesn't have the interest to write these scenes, or doesn't know how to work them dynamically into a script. If you watch a good movie or read a good book or watch a good TV show, usually you'll have scenes that we talk about doing two things at once or doing multiple things at once. You'll have characters going about the business of doing the plot, of sneaking into a place, of solving a puzzle, of going somewhere and getting to a thing. But there will also be conversation between the characters, or we'll observe things in their actions that tell us about them and about their relationships or whatever else. Kingdom Hearts doesn't really have these scenes. At least not anymore. Days has scenes where the characters are doing missions, and it has the scenes where it is time for characters to sit down and talk. And it doesn't have many scenes in between this. It has some, but not a lot. Now let's move on to Birth by Sleep, which is a game about 3 good friends, and how are the relationship scenes in this game written? Well, the first scene, what to do? I guess I could just take this dialogue that someone else already wrote to introduce the characters from Kingdom Hearts 1, and I can just copy paste it into this script and change the proper nouns around, and that'll tell the audience that these people are friends, and also that they are like the characters that they already like, so they should like these characters too. Even though I am actively distracting the audience from learning important information about these new characters and just reminding them of the old characters. That first scene in Birth by Sleep, where all the characters are talking with each other, is borderline useless. We don't learn anything about them. The next scene, where all 3 characters are together, is the Mark of Mastery exam, where nobody has any dialogue other than Ven hitting a ball and Aqua going, "No, Ven, stay back," and him going, "No, I'm not gonna listen to you," and Terra saying he can take care of himself, and Aqua saying, "Okay." Then after that, there's like a couple of brief scenes where 2 of them interact, where, like, you know, there's the Cinderella world where Terra is like, "Hey Aqua, I got some information. Also, do you still have the dream of being a Keyblade wielder?" And she says, "Yes," and he says, "Cool," and then they go their separate ways. There's the scene where Ven and Aqua meet on Enchanted Dominion, where she's like, "Go home, Ven," and he says, "No," and they go their separate ways. And then you get to the second scene in the game, the second real scene in the game, where all 3 of them are together, and it's a conflict scene where they're all like, "I hate you, you lied, you're spying on me, you're the worst, Aqua, so now you know the truth." And it's like, who are these people? Why do they like each other? What are their traits? How does this relationship function? It's so bizarre. And while I think that Birth by Sleep is at least partially able to circumnavigate this issue, because at minimum the plot lines that each of the 3 characters are involved in individually work pretty well and are engaging, it's very hard for me to buy into these 3 as friends, and for me to buy into the emotion of why they are sad at the ending of the game and why they take the actions that they do at the ending of the game. You have to buy into them really loving each other this much. And the game just doesn't get you there, because it expects you to take the friendship and the relationship stuff for granted. You know, the stuff that got people into these games in the first place, the stuff that made them engage with these characters, it just kind of expects you to just believe that it's there already, instead of giving you a reason to care about these people and how they feel about each other. And then Dream Drop Distance, that's where I think these problems are most apparent, because the only relationship and character writing in that game is Sora or Riku in a room where the other one isn't there, talking to camera about how much they love the other character, and each of them gets 6 opportunities throughout the game to say the same thing about how much they love the other person, and that's basically it. And then moving on to Kingdom Hearts 3, just to continue to focus on Sora and Riku because it's an easy example, they don't have any scenes together. The only times that they share the screen space is when they are in Yensid's office to receive or deliver exposition to the other characters. They just meet up for these boardroom meetings, because Tetsuya Nomura's scripts are extremely utilitarian, is the way that I would describe them, which is bizarre to me, because as a director, as an artist, it always seems to me like his strength is in creating these unexpected, contrasting images and ideas. Taking, Versus 13, guys in armor with machine guns fighting a guy in a suit who uses magic in an environment that looks like Tokyo. Kingdom Hearts 1 Secret Ending, we had this, this bright and colorful world of Kingdom Hearts, but all of a sudden we're in this dark, gloomy, rain-swept city with evil or heartless than we've ever seen before. Kingdom Hearts 2 Secret Ending, how on earth did the world of Kingdom Hearts look like this, with guys in armor and thousands of Keyblades, when up until this moment we were under the impression that there were like maybe 5 or 6 tops in the universe. I think that his strengths really lie in taking these things, these unexpected elements, and smashing them together to create exciting results. That's part of why Kingdom Hearts is so neat. There's a great interview out there somewhere. I haven't been able to re-find it for forever, but I know that I read it, where when he was talking with Yoko Shimomura about composing a piece of music for the first Kingdom Hearts trailer, she was going to make something light and bubbly and Kingdom Heartsy, and he told her, no, do what wound up being Destati, the Dive into Heart theme, the bum 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 da 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 ba. recall? Like the really dark, heavy, choir stuff, right? And that's not what people were expecting out of a Disney game. That's not what people were expecting this Kingdom Hearts thing to be. And Kingdom Hearts as a series is a, series that is bright and colorful, but confronts, really deep, true evil and death and these social issues that Sora and Riku are dealing with in the first game and all this other stuff that you wouldn't quite expect. And it's because they take all these things and smash them together that Kingdom Hearts is so interesting and enduring. But then you get to the more recent games where it actually comes time for him to write the scripts, and everything is so dry and so expository and so straightforward that the spark that made the earlier Kingdom Hearts games interesting, that grabbed people by the balls when they saw the trailers for Versus, it's not there anymore. And I mean, anybody who enjoys Kingdom Hearts 3 or Dream Drop Distance or any of these other games that I have mixed feelings on or that I don't enjoy all that much, that's totally fine. I'm not here to try and tell anybody that they're wrong or anything. That's not how opinions work. And there's certainly enjoyable aspects of all of these different products, but enjoyable aspects even to me and aspects that I can see that, maybe aren't that appealing to me, but I get why they're appealing to other people. But this thing that I'm talking about right here with Nomura's actual writing style, once he's in charge of the scripts. Again, I'm making assumptions about this. We don't know who wrote what exact words and made what exact creative decisions. And even beyond that, there's the Walt Disney Company, there's Square Enix, there's a million different places that interference and creative decisions can come from. I was just reminded the other day of the fact that the reason that the summons in Kingdom Hearts 3 are these weird, transparent, elemental things instead of actually appearing is because the Walt Disney Company said that they were not allowed to put any Disney characters other than Donald and Goofy from another movie into the setting of another movie. So they're no longer summons. We're linking with the essence of these things because they can't actually come here. And that's just a raw, stupid decision on the Walt Disney's part made by people who don't understand the product at all. So I guess my point is I want to make sure that as I continue with this discussion, understand I can't judge where any of the creative decisions do or don't come from or who says yes or no to any various things within the whole system. Understand that my criticisms of the product are just criticisms of the product, and I'm trying my best to identify interviews or patterns in the stylistic presentation of the series to maybe explain why certain things happen. I'm not laying the blame or responsibility at anybody's feet. I don't care if something was the creative decision of Tetsuya Nomura and he had complete and total control and it was what he decided to do. I don't care if there was a decision of something that they wanted to do but they couldn't because of time constraints or whatever else. I don't care if the Walt Disney Company told them to do one thing or told them that they couldn't do the other thing. I only care about what was in the final product. And the fact of the matter is, honestly, the people who make this game are Japanese. I'm not speaking Japanese. Anybody associated with, of the people associated with the Kingdom Hearts series who are likely to see anything that I create, it's probably more likely to be someone from the Walt Disney Company. So, if I can convince them that the decisions that they're enforcing upon the development of the series are poor, then all the better, because, Tetsuya Nomura's not going to watch any of the stuff that I'm making. But anyway, now that I've distracted myself in this whole thing talking about all of that, like I was saying, there are people who appreciate aspects of the more recent games that I'm not really into, and I get that, and that's totally fine. But when I look at the creative direction of the more recent entries in the series, the thing that I don't get is when I see people talking about the things that they like about the more recent games, is I see people who, when challenged with the writing isn't that great, the stories aren't that good, or whatever else, their response, and this is not an invalid response, is I don't really care about that. I enjoy how wacky it is, how silly it is, how nonsensical it is. I enjoy the weirdness. I enjoy the wackiness, the over-the-topness, right? And I get that. The idea of turning it on and kind of just laughing with it and rolling with the punches, and I would just want to see what crazy thing Mr. Nomura is gonna do next, right? I understand that appeal, but when I look at the more recent games, I don't really know what they're talking about because they're very, very straightforward in their plotting and even in their twists. Dream Drop Distance backloads a bunch of twists into it, but in terms of their overall plotting, and Kingdom Hearts 3 pretty much in its entirety, is constructed of scenes where the characters say, this is what we have to do now, and then they do it. And if that isn't what happens, and they say, this is what we have to do now, and then there's an indeterminate amount of space where they wring their hands over how are we going to do this thing, and then the thing miraculously happens without any problem solving or creative solution to make it happen. I mean, like, I want you to legitimately try to think about how you, if you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, think about how you felt when you first saw the Kingdom Hearts 1 secret ending or the Kingdom Hearts 2 secret ending, or when you first saw the secret boss fight against Lingering Will and he transformed his Keyblade into a whip and a hovercraft, or if you're just a fan of the works of Mr. Nomura in general, how you first felt when you saw the Versus 13 trailers or whatever, right? I want you to tap into that feeling of excitement of seeing a setting or tropes or aesthetics that you're used to getting mutated, and how exciting that was when you first saw it, right? Because I really think that's where Tetsuya Nomura's strengths are. That's where a lot of the more exciting moments in Kingdom Hearts come from, of, oh, fake out, Maleficent is dead, game isn't even over yet, she wasn't the main antagonist, it was actually the scientist from the reports. By the way, he's possessed Riku, we're going there now. Also, Kairi is a princess of heart, not any of the other Disney people, she's important to the plot. Also, Sora just killed himself, and you're playing as a Heartless now. Oh, also, later on, this girl Naminé, this cute little angel girl in this white dress, she's kind of a little bit morally gray, actually. There's all these weird dudes in black outfits, these weird anime characters who all have special powers. We're playing as this Roxas guy, we don't know anything about him, where did he come from? Oh, I guess he's living in a computer? Oh, I guess he's maybe dead now? The way that all this stuff gets thrown at you, and all these wild ideas that you get taken off of, and that most of them have at least some kind of emotional through line beyond just being there to weird you out. Obviously, in trailers like secret endings, the trailers for Versus 13, you just have the surface level of being weirded out and seeing these exciting ideas, which is, generally speaking, I find something that often artists have a hard time translating into writing. There's a lot of extremely talented artists on the internet nowadays. You see so much really cool, interesting concept art on the internet, but then often when these people try to tell you the story behind the art or translate it into something larger, it's like, you're not really sure what it actually is, or when you even try to just imagine for yourself a larger narrative behind this image, oftentimes it's just the excitement of the image itself, and there isn't really a whole lot backing it up. But the thing is that if you're into Kingdom Hearts, I have to imagine that you're at least, I know I'm rambling, I know this is all over the place, this video is a disaster, which is why it got shelved for months, and now I'm back recording more. If you're a nerd, if you're into Kingdom Hearts, you're probably a nerd and you're into other nerdy things. So I want you to think about other nerdy franchises that you're into and general nerdy ideas that you're into, and how cool it is to see those ideas get played around with. It's hard for me to pick out examples because I never know if people will know the specific examples that I'm talking about. But like, I was recently rewatching the first couple of seasons of Red vs. Blue, actually, and there is an amazing episode in season 3 of that about time travel that plays into all of those things that if you're a nerd and you think about time travel and you're like, well, that doesn't really make sense, would it work this way, would it work that way? And there's this whole episode that's just making all of these jokes about how little sense time travel narratives make in general, playing into all of the logical extremes of how far you could take a time travel narrative and all the weird things that you could do with multiple versions of one person traveling through the same sequence of events over and over and over again. And it's really funny. And it might not be funny to someone who isn't the type of person who's watched Back to the Future and Steins Gate and other weirdo stuff and just thought about time travel, you know, like me or like other people. There's all kinds of, Steins Gate is just a particularly weird time travel story, so it's easy for me to throw that one out there. A more recent example that perhaps more people have seen, you know, Into the Spider-Verse, you introduce, okay, now we have a cartoon character in here, Peter Porker, who gets to operate on cartoon logic. We have an anime girl in here with a robot. You have different people with different powers, right? And different art styles coming in that movie, and that's kind of the fun of that, is bringing all those different people in with different animation styles, different art styles, different fighting styles. My problem is that where Kingdom Hearts is now, I imagine Tetsuya Nomura writing Spider-Verse, and I think he would cut a cool trailer for it he would have a couple of really cool visual ideas, but then when he, again, I don't want to be too presumptive. We don't actually know who wrote individual story ideas and stuff again. So I shouldn't say Tetsuya Nomura. The narrative trajectory of the Kingdom Hearts series, if the people responsible for it sat down to write Spider-Verse, I think they would create a neat trailer for it, and I think the movie would have Spider-Noir and Peter Porker and Penny and Gwen show up, and they would spend 30 minutes explaining how Kingpin's interdimensional device works, which the original version of the movie doesn't explain at all because it doesn't matter. And then after those 30 minutes of explanation, they would forget to let Noir and Peter Porker and Penny and Gwen do anything, and the only people we would see fight would be Miles and Peter. And maybe like each of those other characters would get like one cool shot that could go in the trailer, and we'd use their art style for like a flashback that lasts for, like the little flashbacks that we see where they explain their timelines that last for like 20 seconds. That would be it. And that would all be in the trailers because that's all that they have, and they don't know how to use these ideas. And like, you know, in the actual movie, they don't explain how Kingpin's machine works because it doesn't matter. So the solution to beating it is, oh, we have to stick this flash drive into it because it doesn't matter. In the Kingdom Hearts writing staff version of Spider-Verse, they'd spend 30 minutes explaining how Kingpin's interdimensional machine of mystery works. They'd spend an hour wringing their hands over, oh no, oh, how do we stop it? And then during the final fight, there'd be a moment where Miles is looking at the machine and he goes, wait, hold on, then that means that's it! And he would shoot a web into the machine and the machine would stop working. That's the most frustrating thing to me. If all of this zany, wacky, weirdo lore was in service of a zany, wacky, weirdo story, it'd be great. But, or I don't know, it wouldn't be great, but it would at least have the potential to be great. But the version of the story that we have now is crazy, wacky, weirdo rules that take 30 minutes to explain that are just the good guys have to fight the bad guys, which they were gonna do anyway, I'm pretty sure. They really don't need that much of an excuse, I think, at this point. Like, okay, so let's, at the beginning of this, I was talking about how Remind is really straightforward because the opening scene is Sora talking to Chirithy, and he says, I need to save Kairi. Chirithy says, if you do that, you'll die, and Sora says, I don't care. And then Sora goes on a mission, he saves Kairi, and he dies, and he doesn't care. That's the whole thing, right? And people talk about, oh, dream drop distance, time travel, bad, blah, and I've gone on at length about how things about the lore don't really make sense, and time travel stuff, they break their own rules, blah, 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 blah. Imagine, if you will, that Remind was instead a time travel battle between Sora and Xehanort, where the two of them both had time travel powers and they were both trying to constantly outwit each other by changing the events of the final hours of the game or whatever. I don't know if this is a good idea or a bad idea. I have no idea how it would be executed. But imagine if Xehanort was popping out of time here and popping out of time over there, and Sora was trying to figure out how to counteract what he was doing, and he was like, I can't keep just repairing what he's doing. I need to try and figure out a way to beat him and stop him from doing all of this and change what he's doing with time. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm making this up off the top of my head. But imagine if all these wacky rules that you have to spend 16 hours of your life learning led to some really wacky, cool conflicts where the characters used the rules that they live in to their advantage. Like, when people criticize the Kingdom Hearts series, and I'm guilty of this too, and they say that Kingdom Hearts is just too complicated. This is just, in general, when people praise and criticize things, this is just human nature. We sometimes latch on to surface level elements that are actually symptoms of the thing that we're really responding to. When people say, Kingdom Hearts is too complicated, it's not that complex stories are bad, it's that the complexity of Kingdom Hearts is not in service of anything. It's not making the story itself more complicated. It's not building into this big, amazing, super intricate thing. Because Kingdom Hearts is really straightforward and linear in terms of its actual action. When people say that Kingdom Hearts is illogical, Kingdom Hearts doesn't make sense. I mean, it's true that sometimes it doesn't, but oftentimes the things that don't make sense is not that the lore itself doesn't make sense. You'll say something doesn't make sense in Kingdom Hearts. I'll talk about this, and people will say, it does make sense, you just don't understand it, and they'll try to explain the rules to me. And I already understood the rules. The rules make sense. The problem is that the characters are not responding to the rules intelligently. It's like the Xehanort thing in the Keyblade War, right? We explain all the mechanics of how the Keyblade War works, and it's like, there are so many ways that we could have responded to this. There are 100 different ways, 100 different at least countermeasures the heroes could have attempted to stop Xehanort from winning. There are 100 ways that Xehanort could have manipulated the rules to win faster. So all of the characters have this set of rules that has been explained to the audience. So the audience says, okay, the villains have this plan. I, as a person who likes the protagonists, I want to push back against this plan. How are we going to stop the villains from succeeding? So you start thinking of ways that you can manipulate the mechanics of the world to defeat the villains. And the heroes just say, oh no, we gotta follow along with the mechanics of the world that are really, really loosey-goosey, and we could do whatever we want with them. I mean, the rules aren't loosey-goosey, but like, they're so specific that we could just violate them in like a tiny fragment of a way, and doesn't that scramble the villain's plans? It's like, if you're engaged with a story, if you're engaged with a narrative that is giving you all of this information about all of the intricate details of this world, and you're in there, you're enjoying it, then you're gonna be thinking about these rules. You're gonna start thinking about, okay, what do all these things mean? If the characters in a story have an objective and they're told, you can't complete this objective because thing is in the way. You wanna steal this thing, you wanna get this girl, you wanna accomplish any objective for any story, and the audience is told, here is the obstacle that is preventing the characters from doing that. The audience's natural inclination is to say, okay, how are they gonna get around this obstacle? If you're presenting complex rule sets and magic systems and all kinds of stuff, you're gonna start saying, what tools do I know that the characters have that they can use to circumnavigate this? What holes are there in the villain's scheme or in the makeup of this world that could be manipulated to accomplish something? This is the natural inclination of an audience. The people who spend all of their, no, I shouldn't say all of their lives, that's a bit mean-spirited, but the people who spend, a lot of time on forums or whatever else theorizing about things in Kingdom Hearts, that's what they're doing. They're taking what they understand about the world and trying to craft something, trying to accomplish a better understanding of it. What could the mysterious motivation of these characters be based on what we know about them? How could this have happened based on what we know about the world? I never bothered to read the freaking Sleeping Realm theory because like looking at the 300 pages of it or whatever gave me a headache. Maybe I'm a hypocrite making this video, but I'll look at it someday, maybe, who knows. I heard that apparently Remind completely blows it out, but whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, the person who wrote that, from what little I understand of it, is like, okay, I'm trying to make sense of all of the things that I see here based on my understanding of the world and the rules of this world. I'm trying to pull together all of the disparate pieces of information that I have and congeal them into a solid understanding of the situation. What may happen next, what the characters could do next, an explanation for what the things that people did along the way were. So when you're told the villains can only win if this hyper-specific thing happens, the instant reaction of the audience is, okay, how do we stop the villains from winning? Assuming that you're engaged and you want the heroes to win, like I assume most members of the audience of Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance were, hopefully, and of Kingdom Hearts 3 or whatever else. If you're laying down, this is what it is. This is what's gonna happen. These are the rules. The audience says, okay, how do we beat the rules? How do we beat the Xehanorts? They start thinking, this is the plan. How do we stop the plan from happening? And every single character in the universe of Kingdom Hearts says, oh no, this is the plan that the villains have? Oh no, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to deal with this. Well, I guess we'll just have to do exactly what the villains tell us to do and hope that it works out in the end, and then it does. Just because of the power of bad screenwriting. Young Xehanort sits you down in Dream Drop Distance and he's like, okay, let me explain to you what's happening. Here's how time travel works in this universe. You can only travel when you leave your body behind. You can go forward and once you go backwards in time, you can only go forward with the linear passage of time. You can only go to a point where another version of yourself exists. You can only move around in this way and that way. If you bring someone else with you through the time, then they forget about the things that they experienced in time when they go back to where they came from, and everyone does have to go back to where they came from in their original point of origin in the time flow stream. And so you take this information in and you say, okay, that was a lot. All right, But then why? Why did we do it? What's the reason? Hit me with some cool stuff now, Kingdom Hearts. Hit me with some cool way where the heroes are gonna manipulate the rules of this time travel to do something neat, or the villains are gonna reveal they have some super complex plan that manipulates the hyper-specific rules of this time travel, and none of that happens. They're here because we wanted to have the bosses from the older games be here. We wanted to have this guy be here, and we had to explain why, if we did this, the characters in the previous games didn't remember it. Okay, well, do you have a good reason for bringing these characters here to the No, we just brought them here to be boss fights. This is why people say, Dream Drop Distance, so stupid, it added in time travel. And then these people will turn around and say that they like Back to the Future or whatever else. Time travel isn't inherently bad, it's that they spent 10 minutes in a cutscene with Ben Diskin explaining to us how the time travel works, and we said, okay, Ben Diskin, I listened, I paid attention, I understand the rules, and then they immediately break their own rules, and the rules don't matter. Why did you sit me down and explain all that stuff and ask me to think about it, and then turn around and Riku's body changes depending on which location he's in, and they travel through time, but Sora and Riku remembered everything that they did when they traveled through time, and did they possess their old bodies, or what's happening? At the ending of Dream Drop Distance, when they all run out of time, what did that mean? The Xehanort goes, we are out of time. Now we all must return from whence or not where, but when we came. Goodbye, everyone. See you in Kingdom Hearts 3. And I'm like, when I originally watched it, I was like, they're gonna be in Kingdom Hearts 3 though, so they're just gonna time travel again? So if there's some kind of clock out on when you time travel, you only have a certain amount of time before it runs out and you warp back to where you came from. So did Xemnas, if Xemnas was like walking around doing his 358 days over 2 business, or what did I just say? I don't think I said the title right. When he was like walking around during Days or during Kingdom Hearts 2 or whatever, and then Voldemort in a robe jumped out and says, come with me, time travel, and grabs him and yeets him into the future for Dream Drop Distance and explains what's going on, right? And then Dream Drop Distance happens, and then they run out of time and Xemnas gets warped back to whence he came. Does he land back in the hallway in Kingdom Hearts 2 time period? And he goes, that was weird. I have a sense of deja vu all of a sudden. I feel like I did something, but I don't remember it. Oh well. And then he takes 2 more steps forward, and then boom, Voldemort in a robe teleports back in front of him and says, okay, time to time travel again, and then grabs him and yeets him back to Kingdom Hearts 3 timeline, where I guess, you're supposed to forget everything when you time travel, but I guess if you time travel again, you remember the stuff from when you time traveled the first time, so he got his memories back from what happened to him in Dream Drop Distance. And then, of course, when he dies at the ending of Kingdom Hearts 3, he doesn't really die, he teleports again back to that hallway during Kingdom Hearts 2 time period, and goes, I feel like I was just in a big fight. That was weird. Okay, back to trying to get Kingdom Hearts. And then, of course, in Kingdom Hearts 3, it's hard confirmed that most of the people in the organization aren't even time travelers. Old Man Xehanort isn't, even though he should be. Zigbar/Braig isn't. Isa/Syax isn't. And then, Larxene, Marluxia, Demnix, Vexen, Luxord, they're all not time travelers. So why did their time run out at the ending of Dream Drop Distance? The time ran out at the ending of Dream Drop Distance because the screenwriters created a scene where Riku and Mickey and Axel and Donald and Goofy were all in a room and they were all about to get killed and they couldn't figure out how to get the characters out of that room. So they said, and then all of the villains disappear because of the time. And then they just forgot about it for Kingdom Hearts 3. If the time juice is a thing, could Sora and friends have gotten on a spaceship with Kairi, one of the princesses of Heart, and just loaded up on food and flown around for a couple of weeks until the Xehanorts clocked out again? But I guess even that doesn't matter because then they could just teleport back in time. They could just do it again. They would just time travel. So what was the point of that rule? The point of that rule was for the one scene where it mattered. That rule only existed for the scene in which we had to get Riku and Mickey and Donald and Goofy and Axel out, which wouldn't have happened if we hadn't put them in a room with 13 people. Especially considering that we didn't use any of the characters in that scene. The only people who even got out and fought were Xemnas and Ansem And they jumped down, and then Axel showed up, and that was somehow a big escalation. And Braig goes, "What are we gonna do now, old man?" And then Xehanort nods, and Isa jumps out and attacks Axel, and it's like, oh man, dude, Xehanort, tactical genius. Braig didn't know what to do, but Xehanort figured out. There's 13 people in the room to fight them. Oh boy, I'm losing the plot. Okay, the point was complexity in storytelling, using rules to actually tell stories that, that thing. When you make a really complex story and you have a really complex rule set or whatever, you want to see the writer and the characters and the story. You want to take advantage of that stuff. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has absolutely bonkers, insane, ludicrous rules that don't make sense even to the author, King Crimson. It just works, don't worry about it. But they use those rules to create really, really interesting fights, really, really interesting narrative scenarios where you're trying to figure out what different powers are being used by which characters to accomplish what different things. Christopher Nolan films in general, I find that even though I like Nolan as a filmmaker, his screenwriting is often kind of shoddy. But when you introduce, like in Inception, the wild rule set of Inception, right? And I haven't seen Tenet yet, but but I have seen, and I didn't like Interstellar that much. It's like, all right, I guess I like Nolan in that, like, he's, for whatever reason, Hollywood has decided he's allowed to make these really weird high concept movies, and they throw money at him, so at least his movies are always interesting to look at, even if the screenplays aren't always quite there. Anyway, that's beside the point. The point is that with, like, Inception, and possibly with Tenet, and with Interstellar, and with his earlier movies like The Prestige and whatnot, Nolan will introduce these really weird rule sets, and then he'll use them to do interesting, wacky things. In Memento, it messes with the structure of how the film is told. In Inception, it's used to create wacky fight scenes like the zero gravity and rotating hallway fight in the hotel, or just wild imagery and stuff like that that's throughout Inception. Interstellar does similar things, messing around with time, messing around with the physics of different planets and all kinds of different things. I haven't seen Tenet yet, like I said, but just from the trailers, it looks like there are fight scenes and action sequences that involve time manipulation. So you get to go and see these movies, and it's like, okay, we're gonna explain all of these weirdo rules to you now. And once the audience understands them, that then means that we can make a scene where the characters understand the rules and the audience understands the rules, so we get to do interesting things with those rules and create scenes that would otherwise be impossible. And within Kingdom Hearts, you have all these rules. You say, uh-oh, the Keyblade War, 7 lights and 13 darknesses, here's all of this stuff, and it's just that they're gonna fight. You could have just said, when the planets align, Kingdom Hearts appears in the sky. Oh, the planets are gonna align in a few weeks here. We're gonna have to build as much strength as we can, and then go to the Keyblade graveyard and fight Xehanort and his team to stop them from claiming Kingdom Hearts when all the planets align. That's all you need, because the conflict is that simple. It's just the heroes are gonna fight the villains and kill them. If you're gonna make all these rules, then use them. And if you're not gonna use them, then don't make them. If you really like Kingdom Hearts because of how wacky it is, and that's totally fine. I'd love it if it was wackier, because quite frankly, for most of Kingdom Hearts 3, I was just bored out of my gourd. The reason that I have time to notice all the things that don't make sense is because I'm not engaged with anything that is happening. Primarily because nothing ever is happening. Kingdom Hearts 3, when you're not on Disney Worlds, is a never-ending parade of scenes of characters explaining how something happened off-screen or how something will happen eventually. And this lack of events means that characters really don't have many opportunities to make decisions and take action, which then that loops back around into, because this whole thing has gotten so wildly off track and unwieldy, the characters in the series being really bland and uninteresting at this point and not really having any individuality, honestly. It's the biggest thing that's weird to me about everybody complaining about Kairi and saying Kairi is useless is that Kairi is interchangeable with every single other character in the series at this point. The good guys who have Keyblades do one thing, the bad guys do other things, and supporting characters do their things. They all just kind of slot into archetypes. Sora, Riku, Kairi, Axel, Roxas, Xion, Terra, Aqua, and Ven are all the same character. None of them at any point in Kingdom Hearts 3 take an action that the other characters wouldn't have taken, with the sole exception being that Aqua is more interested in Ven and Terra than, say, Sora is, right? They'll do the same actions, just towards different characters. Like, okay, to go back to Union Cross, because it's kind of an easy punching bag, but it's also, even though it has a lot of problems, there's moments where they lay up a shot and they're ready to swing and knock it out of the park, and they don't even swing. It just flies right over home plate. They don't move. It's like they didn't see the pitch thrown. So like, let's look at Marluxia, right? Because I think actually this is Marluxia and Strelitzia and all that kind of stuff is a really great example of the different functions of scenes, okay? We're gonna concern ourselves briefly with 5 scenes from Union Cross. First, the scene where we are introduced to Strelitzia. Technically, we could consider this a montage if we want, or maybe even 2 scenes, but for our current purposes, because the scenes that I want to talk about are doing the same thing, they're one scene. Then we have the scene where Strelitzia dies. Then we have the scene where Marluxia is introduced, immediately juxtaposed with Strelitzia dying, and he's introduced in a suspicious manner. Then we have the scene where Marluxia approaches Larxene and says, hey, Strelitzia was my sister, what was the last time that you saw her? Then, many months later, but this is the next time that this kind of plotline really comes up in a significant way. We have a scene where Marluxia is having a nap in a field of flowers, and he has a dream where he's talking to his sister, and he says that he loves her, and she says that I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. Okay, so these scenes each have their own functions, and they're telling the audience certain things. Any scene in anything exists to tell the audience something. The initial scenes introducing Strelitzia exist to make us feel sympathetic towards her. This is accomplished by showing us that she has objectives, she has weaknesses, she has things that she wants to accomplish and things that are standing in her way. She wants to be friends with player character, she's very shy. Next scene, Strelitzia dies, exists to make us feel very sad because we were just made to feel sympathetic towards Strelitzia. Next scene, introducing Marluxia, created to throw suspicion on Marluxia for the killing of Strelitzia. Scene where Marluxia says, hey, Strelitzia is my sister, I need to find her, exists to tell us that Marluxia is Strelitzia's brother, and that he, at least to, not necessarily to exonerate him, but to make the audience go, well, maybe he didn't kill Strelitzia if he's telling the truth. Then the next scene where he has his dream with Strelitzia is to tell us that he loves Strelitzia, so he's basically completely exonerated for the murder. There's no way he could have done it. I am now going to describe an alternative sequence of events to Union Cross that I hope will demonstrate why this style of writing, like I said before, is very utilitarian, and why it seems that whoever is responsible for writing these scenes seems to have a very blunt force trauma understanding of the utilities of scenes. To be fair, we're talking about a mobile game here where there's limited expressiveness to the characters. The episodes usually can't be all that long. So am I taking a cheap shot at a crappy mobile phone game? Yes, but these are places where I can find these extreme examples, and the same problems appear in the $60 big budget video games that were Square Enix's biggest release of 2019. Okay, stick with me on this, because I'm probably gonna get a little bit lost in the weeds as we go throughout this process. Let's start in that scene where Marluxia approaches Larxene, and let's say that kicked off the beginning of a murder mystery story arc where Marluxia and Larxene are looking into the disappearance of Strelitzia, all right? So just from the way that the two characters interact immediately after he starts talking to her, we could learn things about these characters. Larxene could turn to him and say, oh yeah, I remember you, you're her brother. She introduced me to you at that party that one time. Or she could say, oh yeah, she's mentioned you before. Or she could say, huh, I didn't know that Strelitzia had a brother. Now all 3 of these things are interesting because they tell us things without a character saying, because all we got in the previous version of the scene was, I'm Strelitzia's brother and I'm looking for her. So unless he's lying, which the game has given us no real reason to think because the only evidence that he actually killed her previously was just the editing, we don't really have much to think other than the little information that's being told to us, right? If Larxene said any of those 3 lines, we're told a bunch of different things. If she says, I was introduced to you one time at the party, we know that Marluxia and Strelitzia are close enough to go to a party together. If she said, oh yeah, she's mentioned to you before, then, maybe they're not super duper close, or minimum, they don't hang out with the same group of friends or whatever. If she says, Strelitzia never mentioned that she had a brother, then that's a whole other plot line. Maybe he's not her brother. Maybe he did kill her, and this is kicking off a whole other thing now, right? So let's look at that version of the story for just a second here, where now the audience is already suspicious of Marluxia, and now they get this piece of information, and maybe Larxene is a little bit suspicious of him too. But Strelitzia has been missing for a while. This guy's approaching her. Might as well look into it with him for a while, but she's kind of suspicious of him, right? So the storyline goes on from here, and they say, okay, how are we going to look into this? Well, last time that I saw her was at that location. Also, we can swing by her apartment, right? So then we're going to see these two characters go to these locations. We'll be able to watch how they interact with each other, which will tell us about how much Larxene does or does not trust Marluxia. We can possibly see if Marluxia is being kind of compassionate and nice with Larxene, or if he's being kind of a little bit direct and blunt and impatient or whatever. This will tell us about their personalities. When they're investigating her apartment, do they just kind of give it a once-over and find some really obvious, like a little letter written that says where she was going somewhere? Or do they do does one of them start doing Sherlock Holmes style deductive reasoning stuff, right? Where they're picking stuff out and solving mysteries. This is going to tell us, okay, whichever character is doing this deductive reasoning is really, really smart. If Larxene finds, if Marluxia is putting this stuff together, we're going to say, ooh, he's really, really smart. Or if we're still suspicious of him, we might be saying, did he plant this stuff? Did he stage this scene? Is he scheming something here? If we see Larxene find a piece of evidence, does she show it to Marluxia, or does she keep it to herself? Maybe she finds something and she holds it for herself because she's suspicious of him. Just through these handful of scenes, we'll have learned a lot more about these characters, both in terms of their personalities and their skill sets, by the way that we see them investigate things. How intelligent are they? How do they think? How do they interact with each other? All this type of stuff. We'll have learned a lot about these characters, and we'll get to see we'll learn these traits because we see them employing them as they're investigating this and interacting with each other, and possibly trying to deceive each other. When Larxene keeps that piece of evidence for herself, and Marluxia asks her, did you find anything? Is she a good liar? Is she not? That's another trait we get to learn about her. If she's a good liar, then we know that's a skill she has that she can use. If she's a bad liar, well then, I hope she doesn't have to lie too much. Ooh, actually, hold on. Since we're talking about murder mysteries and all this kind of stuff, this is gonna go back to something I was talking about just a minute ago. There's a character in the film Knives Out named Marta who is physically incapable of lying without throwing up. Whenever she lies, she has to throw up. She just has to. It's a physical reaction that she always has. And that may seem a little bit over the top and a little bit silly, but the film uses it in a lot of interesting ways. And this is going back to what I was saying earlier about if you're gonna have the wacky rules, use them. Have the characters manipulate the rules of their setting and do all kinds of wacky stuff to introduce things. If you're a nerd, don't you want to see all these different exciting things employed in different ways? In Knives Out, the fact that Marta throws up anytime she tells a lie comes up like maybe 5 or 6 times directly throughout the film. And it always comes up in a completely different way. And by the end of it, they have played with that idea to pretty much as far as you can think of them taking it. By the end of the movie, it keeps coming back up, and it's always in different ways, and it's taken to the absolute extreme that idea could be taken. And you really appreciate it because you're like, great, the writer came up with this weirdo idea, and then they actually explored it intelligently and completely. All right, now let's loop back around to option number 1, where Larxene and Marluxia met that one time at a party, and we know for sure that they are actually related to each other, right? So that's no longer, we don't have that mystery. We know that at least Marluxia and Strelitzia were related to each other. However, we don't necessarily know that he didn't kill her, because it's not like siblings have never killed each other before on the history of the planet. So they go about investigating somehow. They go back to her apartment, they go back to the last place that she was seen, similarly to that other plot line. But right off the bat, maybe Larxene is she's gonna ask a question like, how much older are you than Strelitzia? I only met you that one time. Or she'll start striking up a conversation about, we never did finish talking about our mutual enjoyment of sadism. Sorry. I don't know what Larxene's interests are other than sadism. Whatever. We'll learn about their relationship a little bit. And also we can start learning maybe about his relationship with Strelitzia from the way that he talks about her. Maybe they go and investigate. They go talk to another friend of hers, right, that Larxene hasn't talked to in a little while. And that friend says, yeah, I knew that Strelitzia, she was always hanging out on that rooftop all the time, and she told me that there was someone that she was interested in, but that she couldn't really work up the courage to go and talk to. And then we could have a scene where Larxene goes, oh yeah, she mentioned that to me before. Or she says, oh, huh. She never really mentioned that to me before. That's gonna tell us how close she was or wasn't with Strelitzia, if it's established that this was a secret that she was keeping, that she was only telling certain people. It could be something that everybody knows, including Larxene and Larium. It could be something that she just talks about all the time. Or it could be something that she's been keeping close to her chest. Let's say that Strelitzia and Larxene were best friends, and Larxene is the only one that knows about Strelitzia's interest in player character, right? Even then, the way that she tells Marluxia could tell us something about their relationship and about Larxene. She could say, well, she didn't really want me to tell anyone about this, but you're her brother, so there was this person that she wanted to meet. Alternatively, she could go, she mentioned this one time that there was somebody that she wanted to meet with. She told me not to talk to anyone about it, but she'll get over it. Now, let's leave behind the world of the rules of Kingdom Hearts for just a second. I know this isn't the plot, but let's say that we are interviewing a character and they say that, oh yeah, she was keeping this a secret, but I guess if she's missing, then I might as well tell you guys. She was hustling hardcore drugs. She was hustling hardcore drugs to the kids in the orphanage on the other side of town. Whatever. This is an extreme example, right? How are these two characters gonna react to this information, right? Is Larxene stunned by this? There's no way, I never could have imagined this being within Strelitzia's character. Or does she go, no, that kind of checks out. She always seemed like a little bit of a criminal element to her. Is Larium devastated by this information? I can't believe my sister would have done such a thing. Or does he say, damn it, I told her to stop running with those gangs. She told me that she told me she was gonna leave that life behind. She lied to me. Does he get emotional over this? Does he just kind of sigh? There's so many things that we could learn about the characters. And then let's say the ghost of Strelitzia or the glitch or whatever shows up, or maybe she's still alive in this version of the story where she's dealing hardcore drugs. I have no idea. How does Marluxia react when he sees her? Does he have a really strong emotional reaction when he hears that there was maybe a sighting of her across town? Does he sprint over to where it was reported that she was? Instead of just looking at a ghost and saying, is that you, Strelitzia? We could have like a scene where a character expresses their feelings about something. By observing people taking action and making decisions, we can learn a lot about them. But in Kingdom Hearts, in the actual writing, the only way that we can learn things is characters saying, I'm Strelitzia's brother. I love you, Strelitzia. Oh, Strelitzia, where could you have gone? And it's just very difficult to get engaged in a story where the only things that are happening are either what is literally happening on screen at this exact second that you are watching it, or a mystery that is off on a scale of 1 to 10 of mysteriousness. It's at 50 because it hasn't been written yet, because it's just, the Master of Masters is a guy. I don't know who he is, I don't know what he is, I don't know what he wants, I don't know where he is, I don't know why he is, I don't know anything about him, just except that there is a guy who is named the Master of Masters, and he wants something, and he has a black box, and maybe eventually the script will deign to tell me what it is that he wants. Okay, I can't allow myself to get off onto that right now. That's for another day. I was just going to talk about my hypothetical scenario on the murder mysteries and then move on. In fact, at present moment in time, I've actually recorded the section that comes after this. But in the process of editing this video, I had to go back and rewatch this scene of Marluxia and Strelitzia in the flower field because I needed to go get the footage to put in this video. And I'd forgotten about this scene, and you know what? We're gonna use this scene as a hypothetical too. Here's what happens in this scene, okay? Marluxia says, I'm really, really, really good at fighting. I fight monsters so easy that my 9 to 5 is over at 11 o'clock. And Strelitzia says, oh my God, you're that good at fighting? I'll never be able to catch up to you. And Larium says, nonsense, your magic is better than mine is. And she says, we should work together. And he says, no, I want you to stay on your own and keep stronger, and when you're stronger than me, then we'll work together again. He's trying to encourage her or whatever, right? Okay, and like in 5 seconds, I was thinking of a really exciting scene. Imagine, if you will, a movie, cold open, all right? A team of teenagers with attitude is fighting a monster, and there's this girl who's a little bit timid and a little bit freaked out. Her name is Strelitzia, all right? She's trying her best, swinging her sword around, fighting monsters, but she's really not doing so well, and other teammates shout to her, Strelitzia, keep up the pace. Strelitzia, watch out! That thing almost blind. They jump in and save her from an attack. You gotta keep your head up, Strelitzia. You gotta pay attention. That thing almost blindsided you. And we see that she's kind of working really hard, but she's a little bit frazzled. And they're fighting these monsters, and a really big one shows up, and they're like, oh my god, what are we gonna do about this? But then suddenly, rose petals fly through the air. Tuxedo Mask throws his rose through and slices the beast in half. A man with pink hair and a sick outfit jumps out and cuts the monster in half. And a bunch of other cool people jump out with him who are all part of his little group. Or maybe he's just by himself, I don't know. And he looks over at our group and he says, hey team, whatever. Sorry, we've been following this guy for a minute and he broke away from us coming after you. Must have figured you were easier prey. Ha 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 ha. You guys keep up the good work. We gotta go. And then he jumps away and runs off to go and fight bigger and badder monsters. And then someone in the group kind of whispers to some, they're all watching him in awe, and two characters who are a little distance away from Strelitzia talking to each other, and one of them says, can you believe that we got saddled with his sister? But I mean, they think that Strelitzia can't hear him, but we cut to a little shot, and she's like, no, oh no. And then we see some scenes where she's doing some other stuff. She's in her apartment doing, I don't know where. We cut to a scene where she's somewhere else and she's training now. She's practicing with magic. No. Initially she's swinging her sword. She's doing like katas with her sword, right? She's getting really sweaty and it's not going well. She's checking some kind of book and trying to do moves and she can't keep up with it. And she gets really, really frustrated and she shoots a giant ass fireball into the air that just explodes, right? It's huge. And then at this moment, we hear a voice from behind, and it's Marluxia, and he says, hey, you know, you waste, I don't know, he says something like, you gotta watch where you fire those things, you're gonna kill somebody on accident. And then she goes, whoa, we should see earlier in this scene, Marluxia, when he's fighting the big guy, he shoots a fireball. It's not nearly as big as Strelitzia's, that's important. Strelitzia shoots this massive fireball in frustration that she can't get her sword katas right. She turns around and goes, oh my god, have you been spying on me this whole time? And he goes, no, I only showed up a few minutes ago. You're showing a little bit of improvement with your form. It's very nice. And she goes, yeah, whatever. I can't, my body doesn't move the way that I want it to. And he goes, why are they always putting you on, I don't know, in this clip, they say something about vanguard and rear guard. He says some kind of technical mumbo jumbo about like, maybe this isn't even a universe where they use keyblades. He's like, you know, why aren't you using this, why don't they just let you use a staff or whatever? And she's like, because the team needs a person with a sword. The team needs a person doing insert jargon role that I'm doing. And he just kind of goes, He doesn't have to say, you're too much of a pushover, Strelitzia. Strelitzia, you should show them what you're really capable of. We can just kind of infer it, because in the scenes, that's the scene that needs to be in between the fight and her training. There's a little team meeting where some characters say something derogatory about Strelitzia's performance, and she doesn't really stand up for herself. And then in this scene where she's, I don't know, I'm inventing this in the 5 minutes since I watched this clip. And I know this is a crappy mobile phone game with this little sprite artwork that apparently only has 2 animators working on it, according to that report from a few months ago. So I can't be too mean to it, but oh my god, guys. This is not interesting storytelling. If you like Kingdom Hearts, I like Kingdom Hearts. Wouldn't you like more stuff to be happening than less? Wouldn't you like to know even more about these characters and see their interesting and unique character traits come out to play in interactions where we see them use their skills to overcome problems, or we see them come up against problems that they have weaknesses that mean they're predisposed to not doing well in these situations, but they have to struggle really hard and work through their weaknesses to get through this thing? That's another thing, like oftentimes when people talk about narratives, and I'm in danger of this too, because I often talk about character arcs, you don't necessarily have to have characters who have a fault that they need to overcome. You can have a character who's more or less the same at the beginning and end of the movie, or a storyline or whatever, but you know, give them some interesting weaknesses. They don't even necessarily have to overcome those weaknesses. They can if you want. You can have a storyline where a character isn't good at talking to girls and they have to get a date to prom. Or you can have a storyline where a character broke their leg a few years ago And when they ran, you know what, we're gonna do freaking Persona 5. The character broke his leg. He ran cross country. He used to be a really good runner, ran track. Now he doesn't really run so much anymore because he broke his leg a couple years ago. And at the end of the storyline, oh boy, he's got to run somewhere really fast. He's got to get over his fear of getting hurt, and he's got to get out there and he's got to run. But they don't have to, even get over it necessarily. If you just if you give a character a weakness and then put them in a situation where that, it would be really good if they were good at this thing. It would be good if this person was good at fighting right now. If this person was really, really good at fighting, if this person was John Wick, they could get out of this action situation. But they have polio, so they can't fight real good, so they gotta figure out how to talk their way out of the situation. Giving characters weaknesses means they have to, and then putting them in a situation where the thing that they aren't good at would be the most straightforward solution to the problem, means they have to use one of their other skills to get out of the situation in a creative way. Hell, even freaking Master Chief, the only thing he's good at is fighting. But there are scenes where he has to try and figure out what's going on. In Halo 2, and Gravemind starts talking to him. In Halo 3, he almost blows the Arbiter's head off, and then he has to get used to the idea of working with this guy. He's afraid of losing Cortana, which leads him to potentially make some questionable decisions in Halo 3. As I understand it, that's actually what Halo 5 winds up playing with. It's all about him making questionable decisions because of Cortana, but I wouldn't know. I haven't followed the series in many years. But at least, that's not a lot. It's Halo. It's nothing, but it's something. It's something more than these characters have. And if I'm saying that Halo 2 and 3 have more going on with their characters than the latest entry in a 10-game long RPG series that someone somewhere has miscalculated significantly. None of these characters have weaknesses. None of these characters have flaws that come up in any meaningful way. Or heck, even it doesn't have to be like character flaws, character weaknesses, like negative. It can be fears. Just even afraid of things. None of these characters even have fears, except Aqua in the one scene where she has to die, so suddenly she's afraid of monsters. Just being afraid of things. Have something that they're kind of afraid of and uncomfortable with, that they have to, oh no, the story conspires to put them in a position where they have to deal with it. Have scenes that establish and elaborate upon their discomforts before finally putting them in a position where they have to confront their fears head on. Think about this, right? Let's imagine a story where Sora is we don't even have to imagine it. Sora is really, really afraid of losing his friends. His friends are very important to him, right? And he would probably blame himself a lot if he let friends die on his watch and didn't take care of them, right? So let's build a story, says an author, where early on we introduce that Sora is really worried about losing his friends, and we build these themes up along the way where he's worried about Kairi or other characters, or Riku even, or I don't know, Donald and Goofy, whatever, who cares? He's upset about characters, he's worried that people are gonna get hurt in this big final clash or whatever, and it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and everybody's saying it's gonna be fine, until we get to the moment where, oh my god, every single character just got killed right in front of Sora. Sora's worst fears have come true, and he falls down and starts crying. And how is Sora gonna overcome this now? Because we've gotten to this point. There's nothing in Kingdom Hearts 3 to set you up to get to that place, to get you to that scene, and then after the scene where Sora freaks out and cries, there's no follow through either, because Sora's solution to this horrible thing happening is to be unaffected by it, both emotionally and literally. It didn't matter, I'm gonna rewrite history. Shouldn't that have happened, to another character or in another context? Or, what was the point of that? The scene of Sora being upset existed exclusively for itself. It had no impact on anything after that one scene, and there was nothing leading into that one scene. This is where the real problem comes from. It feels like there was no second draft. All of the scenes exist exclusively for the content that they themselves contain, and there is no connective tissue between anything else. They are self-contained, they deliver the information that they exist to deliver, and then that scene stops mattering. It doesn't set up the next scene, it just tells you information, either about the character's emotional state, exactly within that moment, within that one scene, the way that they want you to feel at that particular slot of time, or like pure exposition information that has been withheld from you up until this point, because we can't put it all in one cutscene, so we gotta space it out over a lot of cutscenes. But I've already talked about exposition at this point. I don't need to get off on that again. We're talking about characters and about how scenes do things exclusively for the sake of themselves and that don't expand outward. And to talk about how scenes do things just for themselves and also about character fears, let's loop back around to that scene where Aqua freezes up when the big tornado shows up, and also a little bit that part where Kairi freezes up when Terra Xehanort is about to take a swing at her. That part in particular I'm including because I've seen a take going around on Kingdom Hearts sites and Twitter and Tumblr and whatever, where people are basically talking about like, people, mocked Kairi and Aqua for being weak in these scenes or whatever, but they were actually responding to trauma because of, we see in Remind all of the Aqua things coming out of the tornado, and in the Melody of Memory trailer, Kairi, we see Lab Coat Xehanort reaching out for her, similar to when Terra Xehanort is looming over her or whatever. So it's like, okay, first of all, before I even get to the part that I actually want to talk about, you cannot write a story where a character has a PTSD freeze-up moment in response to trauma that will not be introduced until the sequel, and you definitely can't do it in a series with 10 games concerning a character who has been established since the first one. But let's talk about that scene with Aqua and the big tornado. I don't think that anyone who played Kingdom Hearts 3 misunderstood what was happening in that scene where Aqua froze up. Everybody got it. Everybody understood, oh, she's freaked out because there's a ton of Heartless and she was in the realm of darkness or whatever. Like people understood it. It wasn't that people didn't get the scene. It was that the scene was bad, but we'll get to that later. It's that the scene there's no surrounding context. The problem is the presentation of the scene. If you're gonna include this moment of Aqua being traumatized, it can't just be, it has to be part of a story. But this little moment where Aqua has her PTSD freeze up does not exist to be part of a character or to be part of a story. We could talk about how, and you guys know that I could do this, you guys could come up with good ways, I'm sure in your own imagination too, of how we could have set up Aqua having some kind of trauma and how we could have paid it off as the story went on. I could talk to you guys for an hour about how we could write a really interesting version of Aqua. I could do something, somewhat similar to what I did for Union Cross a minute ago. But I don't need to, because what's important is why she had PTSD, was because the writers wanted to make a scene where every character died and they didn't want to have to animate a fight. The writers did not want to write a storyline about, I guess I can't claim to know what the writers wanted or didn't want to do. This is another thing, I don't know if we've talked about it in this video. People get really hard on creators of things sometimes, because it's like no art comes out exactly the way that an artist imagines it, Like people look at a piece of art and say, oh, that person is so stupid, why did they make those decisions? And it's like, maybe they had to finish it because otherwise they were gonna get fired. Sometimes these things just happen. So I can't claim to know what the writers wanted to do or what they didn't want to do. All I can say is what they did do. They did not attempt to write a story about Aqua suffering from trauma. They attempted and succeeded at writing a scene where every character died with as little animation work as possible. The scene where Terra Xehanort knocks people over and then the big tornado shows up and kills everybody does not happen because the writers wanted to write a scene where Aqua and Ven confront Terra for the first time in a while, or where Sora is really worried and sad and terrified over losing his friends, or Aqua has a PTSD flashback, or Kairi is traumatized because of repressed Melody of memories, hypothetically. It happened, in all likelihood, because Tetsuya Nomura and some other people from the team went to go see Avengers Infinity War in 2018, and they came out of the theater saying, wow, that was really cool, let's put a scene in our game where all of our main characters die too. Because we already know that Nomura is a Marvel fan, and we know that in 2012, he went and saw Les Mis, and that inspired him so much that he wanted to make Versus 13 into a musical. It would track, in my mind, if the ending had already been, Kairi dies, Sora says, I'm gonna abuse the power of waking to save her. Mickey says, that won't work, you'll kill yourself. And Sora just says, I don't care, I'm gonna do it anyway. And then they came in and said, okay, but now I wanna do an extra scene where everybody dies. but we can't put it at the end because we want the focus to be on the Sora and Kairi thing. So we'll just put it a few hours earlier and have them die to something totally unrelated, and Sora can save them with the power of waking. That's fine. And we don't want to animate a cool, complicated fight scene where everybody fights against Terra Xehanort, or a scene where the tornado shoots out to all of its tendrils and people duck and dodge out of the way and shoot magic and slowly get picked off, because that'd be a lot of work. And we've come up with this idea with less than a year of the game's development left, and we already blew all of our money recreating Let It Go. So let's just have all the characters stand around, and Terra can one-shot a couple of them to thin out the numbers, and then when we decide that it's time for him to leave the scene, Donald can just fire a nuke at him and remove him from the scene, and then the tornado can show up, and we'll have Aqua be like, oh no, I'm traumatized, and then she'll fall over and die, and then the scene will be over, and we can animate it in like a weekend. It is not that people didn't understand that Aqua was traumatized, like people trying to like defend that scene or Aqua's character or whatever, as if she's a real person whose honor needs to be defended. It was not that people looked at that scene and didn't understand what was happening. She was confident, then she looked at the Heartless, then she said a line like, no, it can't be, or something, and then she froze up, and then she got hit. Everyone understood that she was traumatized by what was happening. It was that the execution of the scene was so bad, and that this aspect of her character was so completely unelaborated upon that everybody could see through the transparent nature of this moment and understand that the writers did not care about Aqua as a character, did not care about her trauma, did not care about anything that was happening anywhere else in the script other than this line that they were writing at this exact moment, where they wanted a scene where all of the characters died, and the easiest way to do that was to have the characters not fight back. This is what I'm talking about when I say that these scripts are extremely utilitarian, when I'm talking about a limited understanding of what scenes can be, and about how, like, despite the zany, wacky rules, everything is really, really straightforward, because the writers figure out where they want to get to with this particular scene, and then they take the path of least possible resistance and intrigue to get there. We know that we want to have a boss fight between Aqua and Vanitas. Do we need to figure out a way to separate her from Sora and Riku, from Sora, Donald, and Goofy, or maybe have Vanitas attack them in a cool action scene and beat them up a little bit, and then Aqua snaps her fingers and she makes a cage match. That's easy enough. We need to have a scene where the characters all die so they can go to hell, and we can have this gameplay scene. The big tornado that we've already made because of the Union Cross tie-in thing, it could just show up and kill them all, and then they could come back to life, and then we could do the Union Cross bit where they kill it with surfing on the Keyblades and whatnot. Yeah, that's fine, whatever. We need to kill Kairi for the finale. Should we like have a bit where she like sacrifices herself to save Sora, or maybe there's like she's part of a big boss fight that you're in, and then all of a sudden the boss fight gets interrupted midway through for a cinematic sequence where she gets to, just have one of the villains knock her out and then stab her in front of Sora. That's fine. We got all these characters that we need to bring back to life, but we've put all these extremely elaborate roadblocks in the way, like Xion, nobody even remembers that she exists anymore, plus in order to exist, she needs Sora's memories of Kairi. Roxas and Naminé were always in this weirdo nebulous zone where we didn't understand how they could have bodies at the same time as Sora did. What are we gonna do to make all these things? I guess just give them robot bodies. Just give them robot bodies, and Xion... Wait, the game ships in a week? Crap. She comes back. We'll figure it out later in the DLC. Okay, so in the DLC, they found, Vexen had sticky notes on his desk about, Xion. So they found them, and they used the notes to make her again. So she's back now. And then, friendship heals her. Yeah, that's fine. The lack of internal consistency or lore consistency or like things not making sense or whatever is peanuts compared to just everything happening being so uninteresting and all of the characters having nothing to do. And that's the biggest loss of all of this, man, is just the story is uninteresting and the characters are uninteresting because they don't get to do anything, because every scene either exists for A, this exact exposition we need to deliver, and that scene is pretty straightforward. The characters just talk to each other. Xemnas has got to tell Sora about how the Nobodies had hearts all along. They'll just stand on a bridge and talk about it for a while. We have a scene where this particular action beat needs to happen. The bad guys will teleport in and they'll kidnap the character they need to kidnap, or punch the character that they need to punch, or whatever needs to happen, and then they'll leave. So like, there's nothing. So all these characters who I really liked a couple of games ago, like, they're not even people anymore. They're all just props at the whims of whatever needs to happen in this particular scene. And you know, maybe I'd be more okay with that if any of the scenes in question were A, interesting, or B, had anything to do with any of the other scenes. When I think hopefully I've demonstrated by now that I used to, be a really big fan of most of these characters. I know I obviously didn't have as much of an opportunity to talk about the cast of Days, but I like Roxas, Axel, and Xion pretty well. I know that I've obviously demonstrated I have my problems with Birth by Sleep and the way that the relationship between those three lead characters is written, but I think that Aqua, Terra, and Ven are all like, they're fine on their own. They're not my favorites ever, but I don't hate them. They're totally fine, and I'm totally open to seeing more done with them and having their characters explored more. But I'm now going to present a challenge. I'm not trying to present this as if it's like an impossible thing to do. I just want to demonstrate that this is a lot more difficult than it should be. Using exclusively their portrayals in Dream Drop Distance, Kingdom Hearts 3, and the Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind DLC. I want you to try and describe some traits of all of the main cast members of Kingdom Hearts without using any of the following descriptors: boy, girl, serious, goofy, smart, dumb, pure, edgy / previously at some point corrupted by darkness. And you can't use any thesaurus, related phrases to those either. Hard mode, give me one trait for every character: Sora, Riku, Kairi, Axel, Roxas, Xion, Terra, Aqua, Ven. Give me one trait for all of them. And none of the traits could be applied to any of the other characters. And you're not allowed to use any thesaurus words for any of the things that I just previously said, using their portrayal in these games, in these more recent games. And you know what? If you want to try and apply this to the Union Cross cast as well, you go right ahead. This is kind of hard to do even when you include some of the older games, because a lot of these characters are pretty simple and carbon copies of each other. A lot of people have really gotten into these characters over time, but it's in a lot of cases because of fan fiction and fan comics and fan art and interpretations of these characters. Obviously, I'm a little bit guilty of this. I've read into some of these characters, but usually I do it when there's at least like something there. I'm doing it for characters who have had ample screen time. When I see people leaving comments, like tons of, because I remember there are people leaving comments on our playthrough saying like tons of people wanted to see Marluxia and Larxene redeemed, and it's like, it's because those people are thinking of the version of Marluxia that was in a fan fiction that they read in 2010. Marluxia hasn't done anything except use a 14-year-old girl as a human shield, and when he was presented with the opportunity to live a normal life and leave all of this behind, he instead volunteered to join Xehanort's genocide goon squad. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I can't let myself get any more distracted. I gotta wrap this stupid thing up now. It's just the characters, man. That's at the heart of everything, honestly. I mean, if there was something else for me to get sucked in by, then maybe. If it was just so wacky and out there and the sci-fi and fantasy concepts were so weird, then maybe. But as it stands, I got into this series because I really liked the core characters, and now I can't really say that I particularly care for any of these people as they're being depicted now. 0.2 shocked a little bit of life into Aqua. I was actually a little bit into that game. I kind of enjoyed 0.2, and it gave me hope for this one, but it's not like a one-off thing at this point. Dream Drop Distance and this and Union Cross. I mean, look, like I said in that stream clip that kicked off this whole damn thing, people have said, oh, if there's a Kairi game, he'll be back in. Oh, Jacob acts like he's upset and he hates this, but he'll be back for the next one. No, I won't. Not until someone tells me that this trend has been definitively crushed, because, I mean, we've been sliding towards this in terms of the writing style ever since really Kingdom Hearts 2, but especially since Days and BBS. It just got really, really bad in Dream Drop, briefly got better in 0.2, and it hasn't really recovered ever since Dream Drop. Maybe it'll get there someday. I'm not gonna spend $60 on every single game that comes out to find out. I mean, you guys let me know, I guess, but it's like until these characters are doing things for me to be engaged with, I'm out. That's it. It's not that I like hate the series now or whatever, or that I won't give it a shot if I hear that things are getting better, but it's like the reason is because people were asking us to do a playthrough of Remind, and I really didn't want to. And the reason that Joey and I wound up filming anything was because at the time, I was editing Kingdom Hearts 3, and I was going through some of the fun Disney worlds and some of the stuff in the game that was a little bit more enjoyable. And I wasn't looking at the ending of the game, and I was like, why not? We could shoot it. Let's just go ahead and shoot it. And then it turned out that it was just a concentrated dose of all of the stuff that we already didn't like about the game. It's like, I have no... People, why are you playing this if you don't like it, Jacob, is another comment that we got during the Kingdom Hearts 3 playthrough, and it's like, I can't know if I like or dislike something until I experience it, and that was a blind playthrough. The only playthrough of a Kingdom Hearts game that we produced before Kingdom Hearts 3 that was of a game that I would say I dislike more than I like was of Dream Drop Distance, and I was like, I was prepping to get there, and I knew what I was getting into, and that was it. I felt that going into Remind, I was afraid that it would be a little bit disingenuous to produce a playthrough of it. Like, I don't want to just subject myself to things that I know I'll dislike for the sake of producing angry videos and angry gamer reactions on YouTube. That's not what I'm about. I'd much rather talk about things that I like in general, even if it is sometimes easier to talk about things that you dislike, and maybe that attracts more attention. Because, the fact of the matter was, before, Kingdom Hearts 3 might have been good, It was really only the one game that I had really, really serious problems with. Other games had issues that I felt snowballed towards Dream Drop Distance, but 0.2 wasn't that bad, and it's like, hey, this is Kingdom Hearts 3. This is the PS4 game. Instead of being a game where Sora and Riku are running around in some alternate dimension, dealing with time travel that was produced on the 3DS that doesn't matter, maybe they'll try this time. And they tried in like a handful of scenes early on, and some of the Disney stuff was okay. It's, I didn't know. But now it's a trend. Now it's a trend, and until I hear the trend is broken, I'm not gonna hang around to beat myself up more by consuming something that makes me upset. And similarly, I'm not going to waste people's time on the internet making videos complaining about how bad a Melody of Memories is or isn't. That's not what I want my MO to be. And that's another reason why I didn't really want to shoot Remind. It's like, even if I was really, really into the more recent Kingdom Hearts products, it's like, I have to do something else with the YouTube stuff anyway, because it's like, I shoot Remind, and at that point, Melody of Memory wasn't even announced, so it's like, do I wait 2 years, 3 years for the next Kingdom Hearts thing? I gotta do something. Look at all these other Kingdom Hearts YouTubers that are scrambling for anything to be the content on their channels recently. I'm not gonna waste my time with that, especially when it's something where it's like, why am I putting this negativity out there intentionally? So I wanna go back, and I've talked about this, I wanna make reviews for all of the games that we have, especially now that, through Kingdom Hearts 3, we have something resembling a complete body of work, the Dark Seeker saga, right? I would love to make reviews of all of these games, especially of the earlier ones that I think are really good. And I've been working on that for a long time. I've got notes compiled on the games, I've got sections of reviews written up, I just kind of don't have the connective tissue to link a bunch of these different ideas together, so who knows when those things will actually get done. I have a handful of other ideas for videos about Kingdom Hearts and style of storytelling and other things, but I can't make stuff like that all the time, because without the appropriate amount of time to prep and plan and write, it becomes a rambling disaster like this. And regardless, I have other things that I want to talk about. I love Kingdom Hearts, hopefully that's clear at this point. I'm not gonna stop talking about it anytime soon. Even Dream Drop Distance and Kingdom Hearts 3, I may say in the heat of a moment in an LP, ugh, I hate this game or whatever. Like, I don't have the capacity within me to feel that strongly towards a piece of media that isn't like Nazi propaganda or something. I'm not gonna hate a goofy video game about anime characters. It's not really how that works. Again, I enjoyed most of Kingdom Hearts 3. It wasn't like stellar. It wasn't up to like where I felt the series could have been or whatever, but like, I was enjoying myself for a lot of it. It was kind of middle of the road, but it was fine. I enjoyed it. These games aren't like, it's not like playing Dream Drop Distance is like pulling teeth. All of these games are enjoyable. There is not a single game in the entire Kingdom Hearts series, save perhaps the mobile phone garbage, that I would say is like a bad video game. People worked hard on these. They're enjoyable. There's a lot of craftsmanship and talent on display. It's fine to enjoy these games. There's many enjoyable aspects, even to the ones that I don't like. I still draw enjoyment from them. And I'm happy for everybody who did enjoy Kingdom Hearts 3 and everybody who is enjoying Union Cross and Dark Road and who will get into Melody of Memory and everything else. I'm happy for the people who are still out there producing fan art and comics that are infinitely more interesting and emotionally expressive than the actual source material, if only because it's providing me with some amount of catharsis after all of this stuff. But you know, I don't want to just spin my wheels on this all the time. I'll have other things that I want to explore. I didn't actually get into it when I was talking about characters, but because I was thinking about it, but since there's no script for this video, again, an example of why I can't just make videos about Kingdom Hearts off the cuff, because it turns into this 2-hour disaster. You know, direct comparison, so you know that it's not just that I don't like anime video games or JRPGs or things that are wild and have wacky rules or whatever. I loved the Final Fantasy VII remake, and part of the reason why I love that game and why I love FF7 is because the characters are so clearly defined and have so much interesting stuff going on. Cloud, Barrett, Aerith, and Tifa are all completely different from one another. Cloud wants to be cool, but doesn't really know how to hack it, but he is super duper strong. Barrett is very, very self-assured to the point that he can never really see other people's perspectives because he's so caught up in his own stuff. There's a wonderful scene in FF7 Remake where something really bad happens, and it makes Barrett angry. It makes him angry enough to make him punch a wall a bunch. Tifa, meanwhile, is just really, really sad over this. She's just racked with emotion. She looks like she's on the verge of tears over what has happened. And Barrett turns to her and he takes her hand and he says, "Hold on to this anger, okay?" And it's like, Barrett, look in her eyes. She doesn't feel angry. Tifa feels guilty and sad in this scene, and Barrett feels angry and outward, and he wants to go and kill. She's going inward because of this pain, and he's going outward. Those are two different characters who have different dynamics, and Barrett's inability to see that makes that character interesting. Tifa feels very, very deeply about things. She's a little bit insular. She's very strong, but she doesn't really like getting into conflict and fighting people. Aerith is the definition of kawaii in the streets, but senpai in the sheets. These characters are all really interesting. They're painted with some broad strokes in the way that they interact, but there's also a lot of nuance to them, especially if you're familiar with the original source material. You know some of their backstories going into it, so you can read into a lot of the little subtle decisions that are made in FF7 Remake. I know that Square is capable of producing really good stuff, which leads me to assume that either A, Disney is completely shackling them, but I don't know why they would shackle them just on writing a compelling script. So then that leads me to either the core staff working on Kingdom Hearts, specifically the narrative, just don't have their hearts in it anymore, or they don't know how to write. I don't know. I know that they can do it. I know the company can do it. Final Fantasy VII Remake is probably going to be my favorite game of the year, and it came out only 1 year after Kingdom Hearts 3. It feels like it came out 15 years after Kingdom Hearts 3 for all the progress that's seen between the two games. Okay. We need to wrap this up now. I have a tendency especially when I'm talking to Mike, when I'm in a room by myself, I tend to just kind of get louder and louder. And I don't really mean to. I'm afraid that I come across as a little bit too aggressive, more so than I do in just casual conversation. And sometimes even when I try to make a conscious effort to not, sometimes my voice tends to flare back up. So now I'm going to make a very, very conscious decision to be calm and collected, and relaxed and chilled out as we wrap up this video, okay? Hopefully, I have stated this previously throughout the many Kingdom Hearts LPs and streams and everything else, and if I haven't, then I apologize. I should have addressed this, but my feeling really is that with this series, there was we actually found out recently even more about the initial development of Kingdom Hearts 1, but I'm going to stop myself before I get off on a whole other tangent. That early on in the series, there was a lot of pressure, there was a lot of will this work, will it not work? There were a lot of people who were very excited about what they were doing, because it's pretty weird at the time, right? Weird ideas, pushing to a different genre and technology than Square Enix had previously messed with. There's a lot of ambition and a lot of energy behind it. As it's gone on, a lot of that energy has probably gone away. A lot of the excitement's probably gone away. It seems like the Walt Disney Company's gotten a little bit more involved and protective of certain things that are going on, and that probably has less to do with the series and more just to do with the trajectory of the Walt Disney Company. You know, it's what happens. But I look at the series as a whole, and there's a number of things that I think of. I think there were a handful of minor negative creative decisions made, with Kingdom Hearts 2. That at the time, if you look at contemporary reviews for Kingdom Hearts 2, there's a lot of writers who said, the game seems kind of intentionally hard to follow. There's a lot of weird decisions being made here. And a lot of people actually scored Kingdom Hearts 2 lower than Kingdom Hearts 1, both because the combat in the vanilla version that we got here in the States was a lot easier and more simplified, and the level design wasn't that great, but also because the story really wasn't quite as straightforward and didn't grab people quite the same way that the first one did. But as you move on to the other games after this, the spin-off games, Days, Birth by Dream Drop, you look at reviews, and generally speaking, mainstream outlets give them 8 out of 10s, whatever. It's a little bit wacky, but it's what you expect from Kingdom Hearts. So really, there were only 3 modes of criticism going into the entire franchise throughout all of this as it went on. Initially, people looked at the series and thought, Square Enix crossover, that's with Disney, that's going to be weird. And then people were surprised when it did so well, and it reviewed pretty well in a lot of instances. Obviously, there were certain people who didn't like it. But as the series went on, we're left with critics saying, oh, it's weird, but that's what Kingdom Hearts is. As it got worse and worse and worse and worse, that's just Kingdom Hearts, because they were afraid of pissing off fans, I guess, or they felt, well, other people will get it, or it was reviewed by hardcore fans, I don't know. Hardcore fans, just for the most part, accepted whatever they were getting, or if they did have problems, they weren't organized about it. Also, you know, I don't know how much the Japanese developers even see of the Western fan base for Kingdom Hearts, and I obviously don't have numbers on this. It certainly seems like the Western fan base is bigger than the Japanese fan base, but I don't know. And then you also had people who just thought the entire concept of Clown Shoes Sora running around with Donald Duck and Goofy was gay, or whatever, you know? So you really only have 3 schools of opinion and criticism on it. It's critics saying, it's weird, but whatever, that's Kingdom Hearts. You have fans saying, cool, give me more, please, Mr. Nomura. I don't want to get off Mr. Nomura's wild ride. And people who are engaging in bad faith criticism saying, Kingdom Hearts is bad, Kingdom Hearts is lame, Kingdom Hearts is stupid. And after I played Dream Drop Distance initially back in 2012 and I saw all of these, it really kind of made me reflect on Days and Birth by Sleep, which I had generally enjoyed, perhaps not as much as some of the other games, but I liked. And it made me realize how a lot of problems have been kind of building up to how we got to Dream Drop. And I wanted to talk about these games in more serious, critical terms, because I didn't really see a whole lot of people doing it outside of a handful of, Tumblr posts from dedicated KH fans writing their thoughts on individual narrative elements or whatever, right? Stuff like that. I wanted to try and make something a little bit more concentrated. Which is why at one point I was thinking about doing a review of Dream Drop Distance, but then I shelved it because I felt I wasn't doing it justice, largely because there was a lot of reasons, but probably subconsciously I knew that I couldn't explain my points about why I dislike stuff about Dream Drop without going into the rest of the series. To explain why I liked those other games, because if I don't express that, then I can't explain why I dislike stuff about this game or why I'm even bothering to, make this review, this hypothetical review that didn't get made. Then when I did the playthrough of KH1 with Joey, it was just for fun. Then by the time we were on to 2, it was like, okay, well, if we're doing this, I guess we're doing this. And I committed. I wanted to try and do something that was a little bit more like, okay, it was a little bit more, I don't want to say that in any way that my opinion is some kind of end-all be-all, because it isn't at all. Everybody, all those 3 opinions that I, expressed previously, except perhaps the bad faith criticism of it, I think this is stupid on concept, Everybody's opinion is what it is. Opinions are inherently subjective. If 99% of people on the planet think that a movie is good and 1% think that it's bad, it doesn't mean that 1% is wrong. It means they have a different opinion. But regardless, point that I'm getting at here is I wanted to try and make something that I thought would be slightly more useful, because I was afraid that perhaps the series got to where it is because nobody engaged with it, not in their own minds, but publicly, with a really formal criticism and serious.
My Let's Plays aren't that, obviously. I mean, I've tried to talk about stuff in a formal capacity. I've tried to take stuff seriously, but it's not scripted. They are just Let's Plays. Even when I had notes, a lot of the discussion is still off the cuff, which is why I'd still like to make those reviews at some point. I just want it to be understood that I really like this series. I really do like Kingdom Hearts, and I would love it if I found out that the next game, like, takes Kairi really seriously, and suddenly she's got an interesting character and there's a ton to engage with. I just don't have a lot of faith that that's gonna happen at this point. If it happens, hey, let me know. And obviously, all of this subjectivity is implied. Media criticism is just about the experience that you have with something and how you felt about something. If there are people out there who watch my stuff, and maybe they're aspiring writers or whatever, and maybe I say something that inspires them to write something interesting, that's really the best that I can hope for. Whether I say something that they agree with and they go, hey, that's a good idea, I'm gonna put that in something that I'm writing. Or if they go, this Jacob guy's stupid, I'm gonna prove him wrong, and I'm gonna write something that, goes against everything that he's talking about, but I'm gonna make it really good, If anything that I have to say in any way influences the creation of an interesting piece of art, then that's, I'd say that's pretty much mission accomplished, honestly, at least insofar as this particular Kingdom Hearts criticism stuff that I'm doing here on YouTube. And I mean, even when I do make those reviews, or if I ever get around to it or whatever, even in the hypothetical scenario where they get translated into Japanese and Tetsuya Nomura watches all of them, it's like, I mean, that's a number one, an absolutely absurdist fantasy scenario, and number two, it's like, what, maybe he watches them, disagrees with me, and doubles down on what he's doing. Even that would be beneficial, at least for the people who are enjoying this style of Kingdom Hearts, because maybe he would figure out, okay, if this Jacob guy doesn't like something, I need to do that, but much, much, much more intensely. And maybe the people who are really into Kingdom Hearts 3 and Union Cross and all that kind of stuff, maybe they'll get an even better version of the product that they want. So, in general, all I really hope for is just that people will enjoy things and better, more interesting stuff will be made. And I like to think that maybe some of the recommendations that I've had and ideas that I've had are things that would make things more enjoyable for everybody. But I mean, who knows? Kingdom Hearts, I love ya. Tetsuya Nomura, I respect ya. Kingdom Hearts fans in general, I only hope for the creation of a product that more people will be able to enjoy, that all of us will be able to enjoy more deeply and more richly. I really feel bad producing a lot of these types of videos sometimes. When the Kingdom Hearts 3 playthrough was coming out, I felt kind of negative about it in a lot of ways, because at the same time I was seeing all these, Star Wars hatred channels and things like that just exist to churn out a video every week about how evil Kathleen Kennedy is and how evil the Walt Disney Company is for ruining Star Wars or whatever, and it's like, it's not the energy that I want to exude at all. I like this series. I think probably most of the people working on it are just normal folks who are happy to be living their dream of working in the video game industry and creating something that people enjoy. I'd love to be a part of that. Hypothetically, I don't know if video game development is specifically where I want to live my life, but, the creation of art, sharing it with other people, it's cool. And I'm sorry if I ever lose that when I'm in the weeds of talking about things. It's just, really is the most frustrating thing to me about this series, is that it just often seems like it's not really trying anymore. Everything is just kind of stuck in one spot, very stagnant, very unengaging. I'd like nothing more than to get pulled in by these things. If anything, my engagement with Kingdom Hearts has led me to appreciate a lot of other things that would probably be otherwise considered mediocre, just by seeing that there's at least an attempt. That's the most frustrating thing, is just that there's not an attempt oftentimes. It's just kind of sitting there like an obligation. We had to get through this video game called Kingdom Hearts 3. I don't know. Maybe the next one will be better. Maybe Tetsuya Nomura really has a cool idea for the Master of Masters. We'll see. But in the meantime, folks who have asked in the comments section for me to release the Remind playthrough understand that the energy Joey and I have in that playthrough is not what I want to be exuding. There will be more Kingdom Hearts videos and content and talk from me at some point, and even scattered throughout other LPs. I make reference to it and we talk about it and I'm using it. But
I promise you, if you were just here for Kingdom Hearts, that's fine. I get it. But if you're here because you liked Joey and I's commentary and everybody else is showing up in the LPs and you found our commentary on game design or writing or whatever else interesting, I promise you, if we're playing Sonic Adventure or any of the other stuff that we're gonna come out with soon, I promise you we're doing it because at least one person in the group has a similar level of interest in the material to what we have in Kingdom Hearts. We might not always have exactly the same types of discussions, and I'm not saying, you're obligated to watch everything we ever make or whatever. I have plenty of YouTube channels and Let's Players and stuff that I really enjoy, but sometimes they play stuff that, not for me, so I don't check it out. I get that. But I'm just saying, if you're just here for the Kingdom Hearts stuff, then I get it, and that's fine, but I promise you, if you look at some of our other stuff, hopefully, I guess I shouldn't promise, I don't know, but hopefully you'll find some other stuff that you might enjoy. Because we can't do Kingdom Hearts all the time. Even if we released Remind, then what? Then we just wait for Melody of Memory, or I start playing Dark Road. Gotta do something else sometime. I can only hope that the something else we produce will be other stuff that you guys enjoy if you give it a shot. And, yeah, I really need to stop this. Thanks for making it all the way through this 2-hour-long monstrosity. Maybe I shouldn't even say thanks. Maybe I should say I'm impressed. Feel free to sound off in the comments section with thoughts, disagreements, opinions, any takes you may have after all of this nonsense. I do try my best to read everything, despite the toll it's probably taking on my mental health.
And now we're back where we started, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna try and keep the mellow tone that I was establishing in the bit that you just listened to a second ago going. Wasn't that a magical adventure through the chaos and destruction and torn wreckage of a video that should have been destroyed a long, long time ago? I hope that you enjoyed it nearly as much as I hated making it. I'm joking around, of course. This video was a lot of fun to make. It was just a lot of work and a lot of chaos, and I'm still not really sure if I'm even happy with it. I think I still kind of I don't know. I guess I like more of it than I dislike. But I know it could be better. I know that this could have been a lot cleaner. I also know that it needs to be done or it's never gonna be done, so here it is. I wanna say again how weird it is that any of you guys even care that much about what I or Joey or any of us at this point have to say. Hello again. Or what she has to say, because she shows up and barks during videos sometimes. It was a lot of fun going through this series with you guys, even through some of the lower points that I don't particularly care for. And we're not done talking about it yet. I'm gonna have more to say about Kingdom Hearts before my YouTube career concludes. I can't do it all at once, and I gotta talk about some other things, because I have other interests. And I can only hope that some of you guys will stick around to explore some of those other interests with us. And if not, you guys enjoy whatever you're doing, and hope you'll swing back around whenever I do get around to making more Kingdom Hearts stuff, and we can have another chat about it then. But this video has now taken up a pretty good chunk of your day, if you even watched it in one sitting. I wouldn't blame you if you broke it up over multiple. That's probably the only sane way to do this. And with that in mind, I'm gonna let you guys go so that I can pack up my camera before my dogs knock over my tripod, and go and actually edit this thing and release it to you guys. And at some point, I'm gonna have to figure out a name. Not for the dogs, I know their names. I meant a name for this video, of course.